fires wide open. Pre-scored. Touchdown, Rebels.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Nussmeier looking for Thomas. He's got him. Touchdown, LSU.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Texas back in Bama territory. Ewers from the pocket. Now he'll loft one downfield. A ton of air running underneath it. Worthy's got it for a touchdown.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Arnold, tempo, back corner, off the Cam, touchdown, Jaden Gibson.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
First play, second quarter, touchdown Tennessee.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Cook pumps, throws, Burden in space. That's where you want him to get the football, and he takes it to the house.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
And here we go, day number 2 of this specific week. And July is halfway on the other end now, right? It's July 16th. Hope you're having a great day, a great week, and also a great month. We are not far away from football practices beginning and eventually games at the end of August. Craig Smoke and Paul Catalina, there you see them on set. And here I am in the corner in the bright red shirt. SEC Media Days continues. A couple of stories from there. Brett McMurphy had a couple of them, and he will join us today at 3:30. Also, Jason Shear, troublemaker, as he has always been, from Arizona, the Wildcat Authority, will join us today at 4. We'll have Craig and Paul's every Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, off the radar with Craig every day with Top 5 Paul Catalina, John McClain Hall of Fame columnist, with us at around 5:30. So, let's get straight to it. Earlier today, Brett McMurphy with this one. The Big Ten SEC unlikely to add Florida State if it leaves the ACC and ACC survives. Sources telling him Big Ten and SEC don't want FSU because adding them doesn't make financial sense. No desire to expand. They've been a disruptive partner. Now, before we respond to that, Matt Baker, for anyone questioning any of this, there's a lot of stuff going around on here about FSU, Clemson, ACC realignment. Not all of it is created equal because not all sources are created equal. So as you consider the sources, remember Brett is as plugged in as any college football reporter in the country.
Very true. There's a lot going on, and I encourage people to go to Action Network, click on that tweet, and read the entire article because there's a lot going on. Disruptive partner is absolutely true. That is absolutely true about FSU. But so was Texas, right? And they wound up with a place. Now, granted, Florida State does not have the clout even close that Texas does, but they do have clout. Clemson has clout. And it says if the ACC doesn't break apart. So then the assumption is that the ACC could stay together if Florida State and Clemson leave, much like the Big 12 did. So I guess we'll see on that one. But there's a lot of things to qualify here, and I still do think if those two schools are genuinely in the water, disruptive partner or not, the Big Ten and SEC are going to kick the tires and see if they can make more money on them. But today, as of this morning, I'm sure they could call ESPN and be like, hey, if Florida State came in tomorrow, are we getting more money? And they're like, well, no, not right now. But that's just not right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to have more gasoline poured on the fire or just the little bitty bits of, I guess, light out there that could potentially turn into a fire, depending on the way you want to look at these things or depending on who you are. Like, there are some that are absolutely taking what's been said the last 48 hours and running with it as though it's inevitable. And that's not the case. And there's some that believe there's absolutely nothing to nothing about any of this, and I don't believe that's the case. I do believe it's somewhere in the middle. I still maintain that I don't believe for a single second that the SEC or the Big Ten have no interest in Florida State or Clemson or some combination of ACC schools. I don't believe that whatsoever. I know what they have to say right now. I know why they have to say what they have to say right now. Like Greg Sankey, if you actually read Greg Sankey's quotes, he did not say we're not interested in anybody. He did not say we'll never add anybody. He said a lot of right now and basically things to keep him out of trouble and to keep from churning up the rumor mill too much. So there's some gamesmanship going on. There's some chessboard playing going on right now. I think there's a lot of different elements with a lot of different special interests that are throwing stuff out here over the last 48 hours. What I also do believe from the Big 12 standpoint is I absolutely do believe they feel like they have a chance to land those schools. But is that a 10% chance or a 100% chance? It doesn't matter if you just call it a chance because then people can take it however they want to. I do believe the Big 12 thinks there's a greater than zero. I don't think the Big 12 is about to sit here and welcome them within the next couple of weeks and have them as brand new additions to the conference. So it feels like there's a really long way to play out here. I think Jason Shear will say that himself, that he's not out there putting out what he put out to say that this is like imminent or right around the corner. This is like maybe another year away, which, I hope is not the case because that just means a year of more speculation on top of a year that's already been filled with that when it comes to Florida State. But it's in the hands of the courts as much as anything. And until that really gets cleared up, then none of the rest of this can get cleared up, as much fun as it is to talk about. So, McMurphy's throwing more gas on it. If anything, Brett Yormark, the disruptor, is keeping the waters churning and keeping people on their P's and Q's and wondering what's real and what's not and who to trust and who to not. And I think that's by design. And I think the Big 12, again, as I said yesterday, finds itself in a very interesting spot where they can kind of, create a little havoc and just see what falls their way. But I don't think anything is imminent, and I don't believe for a single second that the SEC and the Big Ten don't ultimately, maybe not today, what they have to say to Brett McMurphy, but ultimately we'll see what the tune really is when the time comes and they really can possibly make a move. And if you read the article, guys, like there's a lot of stuff in there like that. Like you read the headline, it's one thing. You read the article and there's a lot of, well, if something were to happen, that's a different story. So you've got to keep that in mind as well once you read a bit deeper, that nobody's saying anything's off limits. They're just saying what they have to say right now, basically.
All right, so let's kind of put this in a couple of bullet points. It's amazing to me that 3 years ago in the next week that the Big 12 was shattered because of Texas and Oklahoma. They did what they needed to do, what was best for them, and the Big 12 then was like, holy, you know what? And we know what happened. They grabbed onto 4 schools to continue at least with some stability. Then you have all of what happened last summer, and they had 4 more. If you would have told me back in July of 2021, when not really all of this happened, because it goes back to Nebraska, Colorado, Missouri, and A&M, and even Arkansas leaving men 25 or so years ago, that they would not only be healthy, they would also be making pretty good revenue, not the highest of levels like the Big Ten and SEC, but the possibility that the conversation would even include adding a Clemson or a Florida State or a Louisville or North Carolina, whoever, is beyond my comprehension.
Yeah, and if you remember going back to it, when the ACC and Big 12 were in similar TV contract situations, when A&M went and Mizzou went to the SEC, there was some talk about Clemson and FSU to the Big 12, and it just never got anywhere. I think Clemson and FSU were using that to, tell the ACC that we could leave at any time. And then they turned around and signed a TV deal that said they couldn't leave at any time. So it really didn't make a lot of sense, their move then. And like going back to the disruptive partner thing, I mean, that is definitely what FSU is right now.
That is definitely, absolutely, that is 100% undebatable in the entire everything else you can say, well, that's true for now. That's true. One thing is for sure true. FSU has been a disruptive partner.
Yeah, and unlike Texas knew who they were, and Florida State thinks they do.
That's a great way to put it. Here's how
Texas was disruptive in a way, but really more because they could be. Florida State has almost been like the annoying, mosquito on a summer barbecue.
Here's the way I described it before.
And they're bigger than a mosquito.
Texas is they're both governors, right? But not all states are created equal. Texas is a smooth governor. You know, they're both going to do shady stuff to you. But Texas is the one that, like, you know, does all the things that it wants and then makes you think that it was your idea, and you're like, oh damn, that was smooth. You know, they're up there. Florida State is like a wacko politician that somehow got elected and is just out there like screaming stuff. That's what they are right now.
And I do think we need to tap the brakes a little bit in any comparisons. I know we're not comparing them to Texas because Texas is gone. They're where they need to be, and they're happy where they need to be. But yeah, this could end up badly for Florida State, because if, let's say, the only option they have is to remain where they are, it just makes it kind of awkward, doesn't it, Craig?
Well, it does make it awkward, but, you know, I think that all depends on the details of what that would look like, because there's 1,000 scenarios out there right now. There's one where they're in the SEC. There's one where they're in the Big Ten. There's one where they're in the ACC. There's one where they're in the Big 12. That's just for conference affiliation, period, much less what that looks like, how they got there, how long they plan on being there, all of those types of things. But, yeah, I think Texas is the one that'll wink at you while they stab you in the back and, like, kind of let it be known, but do it in such a smooth way and do it in their own way to where you're like, you expect that from them, and they do it in a way that, smooth is the right word, and a bit more professional, whereas with Florida State, it is like the kid crying and screaming and tossing the fit and wanting its way, and if I don't get my way, I'm going to continue whining and screaming, and that's kind of how they come across. So, yeah, they're in a spot now where I know the last couple of days have been really hard to hear all of this stuff about the Big 12, because when all this started to begin with, that was not what the end goal was. The end goal was the SEC or the Big 10. I still believe that's the end goal. I still believe, in my opinion, that is not sourced or anything. I don't make up sources. I don't do anything. I'm just saying I don't believe the Big 10 and the SEC and what they're saying right now. I know what they're saying right now. I don't believe that a year from now, if all of a sudden things were to open up, TV partners would have agreed to it, that sort of a thing. And I would happily be wrong, because you know what being wrong would mean? I mean, Florida State and Clemson in the freaking Big 12, which would be incredibly insane after, to your point, what happened a couple of years ago. And the fact that, like you said, we're even debating the merits of Florida State and debating, you know, where they could end up in a couple years. I think there is a lot of just noise that's just kind of, you got to sort through what's noise and what's actually what. But there's undeniably a bit of momentum on the part of the Big 12 to continue to be the disruptor and kind of be that annoying gnat, you know, that's not being the so-called traditional conference and kind of doing things that are their own way and doing things that might rub people the wrong way. But ultimately, if it gets them what they want, then they did what they needed to do. And that's what Brett Yormark was hired to do, is to make them as strong as possible. And certainly grabbing Florida State, grabbing Clemson makes you stronger than you ever could have imagined before.
Let's read a couple of the chat room. Grace and Ganoush trying to convince FSU donors that playing 9 conference games instead of 8, also they can move to the Big 12 is a hard sell. The Texas move came with more money and one less conference game.
Yeah, but that conference game's coming.
I think that was where, you know, the SEC's been holding out for a conference game, and well, if we're going to play another conference game like everybody else, then we're going to need more money. Well, how could you knock out 2 birds with one stone? All right, more money, more conference games. You play 9, throw Florida State and Clemson into the mix or some combination thereof, and there you I think one would come with the other. Don't you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
Like that, if you added Florida State or Clemson or North Carolina or whoever, watch that 9 conference games all of a sudden become a real deal. That's
you mean
what I
in
think.
the SEC?
Yes. Yeah.
From JBaller54, the adding of FSU and Clemson adds value. There would be a new TV deal. Of course, that would have to be something they know in advance. When you add private equity, then add selling the name brand of FSU and Clemson, you're almost making not double of the ACC, but you're increasing without question, not Big Ten or SEC money, but now you are at least in the same neighborhood.
Yeah,
I paraphrase Jay Baller a little bit with that.
I think they're foolish to think, and I don't know that they do think this, but that, and they know that they're not going to be having all that money because they're going to have to pay some out, that in the next 5 years, they're going to be making $80 to $90 million a year.
The 2 big boys.
Yeah, they're not going to be making 80 to 90. Like, they're just not. I mean, that's not, you know, unless you know, private equity is
double
ridiculous
of what it is right now.
Yeah. But if they can, over the next 6 years, you know, make 65 to 70 and then get that big payday on the next TV deal, I think that's what they want. And the problem the ACC has, and this is not just Florida State and Clemson, this is those 7 schools last year that had this discussion, is that everyone else is going to get to renegotiate their TV deal twice before the ACC gets to do it once.
Yeah, that's that was the big, I guess, negative towards the ACC, and the big feather in Brett Yormark's cap with jumping the line, going ahead and getting a new TV deal squared away ahead of the Pac-12, ahead of schedule. Otherwise, they'd be doing it right now, guys.
Yeah.
They'd be doing it right now. They jumped ahead a year early, cut the Pac off at the knees, and basically cut them out of existence in so many ways by doing that. That was a calculated, cold, but incredibly smart business move. And also in doing so, yes, they've also got their contract coming back up before this next go-around. And I think based on all of Brett Yormark's comments that they are really gearing up to make that next contract something a lot different than it is right now. And how can you do that other than adding – teams of interest and increasing your brands in that way with top-level, brands like, for example, a Florida State or a Clemson. I'm still not high on the percentages here, but I definitely see the vision, and I see how if certain things fell a certain way, it could come into fruition. And I never thought I would even give it the time of day, but you can at least see like the little small chance of it happening. And who knows how much that increases over the next year or so, depending on how certain things fall. But, yeah, the Big 12's got their TV deal coming back up. And, the part of it, though, is like it's not like this is just without any questions. And, for example, it'd be like, so are you signing these teams to grant of rights to ensure that this TV deal is intact and that even if the other two were to come along, which I still believe they would come along before then, but, like, what kind of guarantees do you have, right? Like, yeah, your TV deal's coming up, but is Florida State and Clemson in this for the long haul? Like, do they help you get that TV deal and then they bolt 2 years later for the SEC? Like there's a lot of of the details, but that aren't answered and make this a lot foggier than it may be portrayed on Twitter today. But you can at least see the base plan and how it needs to be massaged a little bit and it needs to be clarified in some places. But there is a semblance of a plan. And it's not entirely out of the question that it could work to some extent. So, I think they're in a very good spot, especially with the way the TV deal was negotiated to have that opportunity to come up again. But it doesn't answer questions about, how sturdy are the new members if you got them to begin with and those types of things.
A couple of other things to put in here. From Pluto 2363. The Big Ten won't take FSU. There's no AAU. Of course, there's a couple of schools. Nebraska had it, then they lost it. They're still a part of it, and they're entrenched in the Big Ten. The SEC doesn't need them. State redundancy. Well, they had A&M in Texas, but they brought in a dog with Texas. They have Florida, but they would bring in an alpha if Florida State. I don't see FSU or Clemson for the same exact reasons going Big Ten or SEC.
Okay, they have Tennessee and Vandy. Those are in the same state. They have Alabama and Auburn. Those are in the same state. I mean, I understand.
2 Mississippi schools.
I understand that that's a talking point of they don't need the new territory, but this isn't about territory. This isn't about the things that it was about the last time. This is about matchups. So you're willing to tell me that they would bypass on having Florida State, Florida as an SEC rival, just like Texas and Oklahoma has suddenly become, or even the offshoots of that, like your Oklahoma-Missouri style, who Florida State would match up with, much less Clemson, South Carolina. So I understand where people are coming from, and I've seen that countless times of, well, they've already got that territory, but they're within the footprint. They only further bolster that footprint, and they add more rivalries and more big-time matchups. So I don't necessarily agree with that, but, I understand where people believe that to be the case.
Paul, I know that you're a Florida State guy, but let me finish. To kind of buffer you. I know you're a Florida State guy and that it's easy to jump to their defense, but you're also very fair and you understand who they are. Why would you think that Florida would allow this to happen? A&M didn't have a choice. Would Florida have a choice?
No, I mean, clearly the SEC works like that. I mean, look, it's going to be
Florida is an original.
Yeah, but even still,
I'm
even still. And look, I'm not even going to talk about that. Like, okay, let's take Florida State out of this equation when it comes to adding Clemson and Florida State. So Florida is a brand that's in the SEC, that's in that state. That's they have the same amount of national titles, all all those things. Okay, right? That's all there. So they're they're the same. But Clemson to compare to South Carolina. So let's just talk about Clemson adding to the SEC. So if your argument is that, well, they already have South Carolina, well, they have a historically bad SEC school in South Carolina. Or you could add a historically really good to great school that's also in South Carolina and Clemson. So if you're the SEC and you're talking about like controlling that area of the Carolinas, wouldn't adding Clemson be additive?
Well, if the Big Ten is truly not interested in either one of them, then why would the SEC be worried about it?
Yeah, well, I think okay, yeah.
That's a different question. They wouldn't necessarily be worried about it.
But if you told me, look, and here's the thing, if you put a gun to their head and said you can take Clemson or South Carolina, but you can't have both, Greg Sankey would be like, "I'm sorry, Gamecocks, you're out."
No, I know that would seem to be the argument, and that's what probably.
But that's comparative. That's the counter argument to there's already a team in that state.
Well, it surely didn't help A&M, and so there we are. A lot of things going on now. All of this. There are still loopholes to jump through. There are still legal battles to either win or lose or draw. And it again, realignment gets the hair on the back of your neck up, right? I mean, it's the way it is. It's the way it's been now for the last 4 years. It is there. When Brett McMurphy reports something, we'll have Jason Shear at 4. I listen. I do listen to both of them. Jason was beaten up last year. When he kept talking about the pack for all the 4 corner schools, and in the end he was right no matter what everyone said.
And let me say this as well is, there's been plenty of opportunities to talk about just random realignment stuff, and we typically avoid that. Just, that's not like our passion is to like come up with realignment scenarios. For others, it's different. It's like they love it. It's their lifeblood. We're more into it when it's like got some legs to it. And we've largely stayed away, although we've talked quite a bit about Florida State and all that, but we've largely stayed away from like the dream scenarios of like, fantasy booking the 2014 Big 12 and all that.
Right.
Because it doesn't have a lot of legs to it. I still don't believe that it does. I still don't believe that Florida State and Clemson end up in the Big 12 when all is said and done, based on where we are right now. I think there's a lot of smoke. I think there's a lot of mirrors. I think there's a lot of posturing. I think it's no coincidence that last year Yormark's talking a big game, and now all of a sudden there's all this kind of overwhelming media days talk, right? Is all this realignment stuff and what's going on and all that. I think there's some gamesmanship going on. I think the Big 12 is definitely involved in it, the way that they were involved in the Pac-12 gamesmanship, and they're dropping little bombs here and there and then, running away and looking back at the chaos that they created. I also think the SEC is acting in the shadows more than you would believe in the public. I believe the Big Ten's doing the same thing. I remember when they didn't want Oregon or Washington, and we know that was total BS. The entire time that was BS. They just couldn't say what they wanted to say.
Like this case, they let things play out.
Right.
Because you never know.
And they watch the board and the moves happen, and I think that's what's going on right now. I think there's an element, and I don't know exactly who, for what reason, I tend to believe the Big 12 strongly is part of this, of the media stuff this week. I think that's a lot of what's coming out. I think there's legitimate sources that are talking about this, but I think there is some intentionality here to kind of create a storm and then see what comes out on the other end of that. So I want to make it clear, I don't think any of us are of the belief that, Clemson and Florida State are joining the Big 12 soon, but I think we can all agree that when you have the guys that are talking about it now, whether it's posturing or politicking or maneuvering or whatever you want to call it, there is more to it now than there has been, and it is of interest that the Big 12 even finds himself in a situation, whether you believe it's a 1% chance or a 99% chance, and people very differently have very different opinions on that, regardless of even if it's 1%, that's 1% more than you ever could have imagined if you're a Florida State fan, a Clemson fan, a SEC fan, whoever. And that's the part that is, from a Big 12 perspective, just really cool, I guess you could say, and just very interesting as well.
It's amazing because I thought this was going to die on the vine, and obviously it's not. Brett McMurphy, the day before that with Jason Shear. Both of them will join us in the next 30 minutes. Here's one more note about Florida State.
And there's no talk about anybody but those two, and we know that's not the reality either.
No.
Yeah.
So here is Matt Hayes, covers college football. Big Ten source tells me about Florida State. I don't know who's advising them right now, but they're doing them a disservice. And now, is that
True Weatherford, right?
Is that Is that a disservice? I mean, is that a negotiating ploy, or do you feel like Matt Hayes is on to something here?
Look, I don't think that – I think that they let their emotions get the best of them in this. And there were obviously some major things that happened, and they said, well, we were going to do this anyway, regardless of this. I do think that the CFP snub threw gasoline on this fire.
Broke their brains.
Yeah, it broke. Yeah, exactly. And I think that, they're mad about a lot of things that, when they brought these issues up to Jim Phillips, like he's just like, well, what can you do? And that's upsetting. I think that, but I think they got in their feelings. I'm still in my feelings about it. I'll never not be.
And you know what? Deservedly so, man. They got absolutely screw jobbed last year. In an expanded playoff, there was no question they're in there. But, I mean, that was just a bad storm, a bad perfect storm.
Yeah, you're right, and I would still be pissed.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm still pissed off.
But that doesn't mean you have to you don't have to make business decisions.
But don't gamble with your future because of that.
In college football's history now, it used to be one game that usually decided it, or all the bowl games, see what happened. But there's a lot of teams that have missed out on winning or being named the national champion and were undefeated. Penn State, a couple of different times in their career, among some others too. So it happens, even though that's a 4-team playoff where before it could be a combination of results in the Orange Rose, et cetera bowl.
But I do think there is an element of the people that won out potentially are looking that way. They're like, let's let Florida State be the bad guy. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, look at the way Clemson's going about their business. You have to be reminded they're even going about any business because otherwise they're not out there pounding their chest and saying, let us out or else. Whereas Florida State's taking like the very extreme stance of it's or else, like let us out or else, and it's like or else what? And I don't think they quite know that
this
yet.
Is like a bad marriage.
Yeah,
and it's not going to get any better.
No.
Brett McMurphy will join us with some of his details. Jason Shear at 4. We also have some notes about Kirby Smart, how Georgia's handling some of those traffic tickets and violations that the football players have dealt with, and on top of that, the SEC official commissioner, or the one who leads the officiating group on the horns down. All of that and more. Thank you so much. If you don't mind, off the top, if you're here, hit the like and subscribe button. This is 365 Sports. So the other day, I don't know what it is, but when I travel, I want to like have lozenges before I go to bed. It's not an addiction, but it's just something when I travel, hotel room like we were, or an Airbnb. And so I stopped and got 2 or 3 of those little like thin packages of lozenges. And the whole time, Dr. Childress at Stonewood Dental saying, no, this is what created all the problems with you. And I put 2 or 3 of them in my mouth late at night, not while I was sleeping, but I did. And the whole time I could see him like telling me, okay, here's a needle in the top of your mouth or a needle here because we're going to have to do a root canal or you're going to have decay. So I took all the what I threw it away. I used to not be able to do that. And it was dumb for me to buy that in the first place because sugar creates problems when it comes to dental work. So if you are looking for a dentist, and I was, and I needed somebody that got scared straight type stuff, Dr. Steve Childress and Stonewood Dental has been that person and that place for me in Robinson, Texas. Cavities. I wish it was just cavities. Root canals. I've had a handful of those. Teeth pulled. A bridge in my front because it eventually just like gave way too. It is something that you have to deal with now, believe me, or when you're my age or even if you're 40, it's going to be a problem. Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress in Robinson, Texas.
Celebrate American quality and value during the Red, White, and Blue sales tag event at Richard Carr. Drive the best. Get professional-grade power and first-class interior in a GMC Sierra. Qualified buyers save $9,000 on all 2024 GMC Sierra SLT models in stock with qualified trade-in. Military and first responders save an extra $500. Plus, find Red, White, and Blue savings tags on vehicles all over the lot. Drive home American quality and value during our Red, White, and Blue sales tag event at Richard Carr GMC.
Richard Carr. They have the truck for you. Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Kasasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Kasasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Offering over 50 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, bar, silver sneakers, and 10 cycling classes with morning and evening classes available. New state-of-the-art bikes that allow you to compete against yourself with a screen monitoring your speed, miles, resistance, and power. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Botch, and Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow, losing inches in weight the right way. There's a kids club included with your membership, plus sauna and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior pro Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Brett McMurphy, Action Network HQ today with a couple of tweets that made people think and talk, and that's what he does because of his sources. He was with us in Vegas. He's now with us from SEC Media Days in Dallas at the Omni. Brett, thank you very much. I saw the note about Florida State, Clemson, and the possibility of this and that. In your opinion, where really is this with FSU or Clemson and their future, and how imminent, if anything, do you think might be in the future?
You know, that's unknown. We Smokey, we have to see, you know, what happens with the league through the legal system with Florida State and Clemson in their desire to get out of the ACC. And basically, you know, what I reported this morning is that, you know, if they do get out and they're the only two that get out and the ACC stays intact, the ACC does not implode, look, the SEC doesn't want them and the Big Ten doesn't want them. So what are they going to do? Certainly they're not trying to leave the ACC to join a non-SEC, non-Big Ten league because they want the 80, 90 million that those leagues get in media rights. So it's fascinating. And I had just, you know, I talked to you guys last week, you know, everything that I saw online, or the majority of it, was Florida State's a lock to the Big Ten. Clemson's a lock to the Big Ten. Well, everyone I talked to, like not 80%, not 90%, but 100% of everyone I talked to, and we're talking about university presidents, conference personnel, athletic directors, consultants, network executives, 100% said the Big Ten doesn't want Florida State or Clemson if the league stays together, and certainly the SEC doesn't want Florida State or Clemson. I talked to 3 SEC presidents at the spring meetings, and Destin in May, point blank, I asked them, and they said, no, we have no interest in Florida State. They've got Florida and South Carolina in those two states. They don't need to add two other schools. So what's going to happen if Florida State gets out and the league stays together? That's the next biggest question. I know a lot of people automatically think, well, they go join the Big 12. I don't think they're getting out of the ACC to go to the Big 12, but if that's their only option, maybe they do that. I don't know. But ultimately, though, the only chance Florida State and Clemson get into the Big 10 or the SEC is if the league blows up. And then if that happens, it's a feeding frenzy. The SEC and Big 10 will fight over North Carolina and Virginia, and then Florida State and Clemson will find a home, perhaps Miami, a couple others. Big 10 is at 20, SEC is at 20. The Big 12 then swoops in and grabs some teams, the Louisville, Pitt, Virginia Tech, whoever's available. Big 12 goes to 20, and there's no ACC. So for Florida State, that's their only avenue to get to the Big 10 or the SEC. And that all depends on how much it costs for them to get out and if others can afford to do so.
What would change the temperature on those presidents if Florida State and Clemson were truly in the water?
Nothing. If they're the only two schools, because look, guys, and I appreciate you promoting my story, but I mean, these people, when they say that Florida State's they can't trust Florida State, they're disruptive, they're not a good partner. You don't want to bring that school to your conference. If you think that, if you think, okay, this is what they did to the ACC. One source I talked to brought up the factor like, look, Brett, they got the attorney general involved. They accused former Commissioner John Swofford of cooking the books to do a deal with Raycom so his son could benefit. Everything else that they've done. Why would we want them if they're going to do that for the ACC? How do we know they're not going to do that to us? And again, these are presidents that are talking, so that carries a lot more weight. And look, there's 16 schools, I think it is, that have gotten out and changed to Power 5 conferences in the last 10, 15 years. Nobody has taken this route. Everybody's gone through the process. There's a right way to do it, and there's the way Florida State's done it, and that rubs people the wrong way. And ultimately, you could even push all that stuff to the side, or, okay, we can live with that if it made sense financially. But guys, it doesn't make sense financially. They're not going to increase revenue per school going to the Big 10. They're certainly not going to increase revenue to the SEC. So, you ask what temperature, how could it change? I mean, never say never, but I don't see how anything changes if they're the only two that gets out. Because the other thing is, the Big 10 and the SEC, they don't want to expand anymore. They'd like to just stay at this number. Now, again, if all the schools, if North Carolina's available, Virginia's available, all these schools are available, that'll change their mind. But if they're not available, they're fine to stay where they're at, because there's so much other stuff swirling in college football with the House settlement, the NIL, are we going to have an NCAA? Are these guys employees or students? All these things they got to deal with. The last thing they want to worry about now is worrying about conference realignment.
Brett, do you see any scenario with, as much as Florida State's brought out the blowtorch on that ACC bridge, that they look around and they realize that they're not exactly who they thought they were, and they try to reconcile with the ACC? I mean, is there any way there's a long-term future there with that conference and that school?
What's the recipe for Crow? Yeah, I mean, look, anything's possible. They could just say, hey, you know what, we changed our mind, we're going to stay in the ACC. And the ACC's not going to go, no, sorry, you're not coming back. Right. I mean, technically they haven't left. Technically, officially, they have not given their notice to leave. So, yeah, I mean, I think that would be a big face plant that you've spent all these millions of dollars in legal fees and everything else to try to get out. And then ultimately you say, you know what, we're kidding. We love it here. We were just joking, guys. We're with the ACC forever. I mean, yeah, that's a possibility, and that could happen. Again, the only, I know obviously you're in the heart of Big 12 country there. The only way they go to the Big 12, because they don't want to go to the Big 12. I want to make that clear. They do not want to go to the Big 12. But if somehow, they know they can't get in the SEC, they can't get into the Big 10, And maybe Yormark does some magic trick with the public, with the equity and private equity. And then suddenly, the Big 12, instead of paying 30, 35 million is 50 or 60 million a year. Then maybe Florida State changes their tune on the Big 12. But, I think anything's possible, and certainly Florida State staying in the ACC is possible. Because remember, the reason they first started all this stuff was they wanted to change the revenue distribution with the ACC. They wanted, unequal revenue sharing. They felt like they were the biggest brand, and look, they are. That they deserve more. They deserve more than Wake Forest and Boston College. They do, but ultimately, whatever difference that would have been wasn't enough. They're going for the greener pastures of the Big Ten, SEC, 80, 90 million, and if they can't get that, I don't know what they're going to do. And as I referenced in my story, and you guys remember this, I reported and others did too, Arizona State and Utah, initially, they didn't want to be in the Big 12.
Right.
But guess what? They saw the Pac-12 crumble in front of their eyes, and they're like, well, one option's the Big 12, and the other option smells like bad fish, so we better go to the Big 12. Does Florida State see itself in a similar situation if they can't get into the Big 2?
How much if, in fact, let's say Yormark is just quiet and letting all this play out along with whoever else, how much do you feel like could be on the table, or would a network give the Big 12 more money, even though those are two alphas? They're blue bloods. But how much more money do you feel that might bring to the table?
I don't think it would be that substantial because, look, whether it's ESPN, whether it's Fox, they don't have a lot of money left. They're pretty maxed out as far as college football contracts. Now, ESPN can, find $1 billion to pay Stephen A. Smith, more power to him. But as far as college football rights, they're pretty well maxed out. And also, if you're ESPN, you're currently paying about $30 million a year for Florida State. How eager are you to pay them 40 or 50 million to go to the Big 12? You're not. So I think it would be a bump. Would it be substantial? I don't think so. I think, private equity would have to get involved to make it worth Florida State and Clemson's worth to make that jump and leave the ACC. I don't think the Big 12 is ever going to get up to the numbers of the Big 10 and the SEC. That's, that's just reality. But if they can get a lot closer and distance themselves from the ACC, then certainly that would make them more attractive to Florida State and Clemson if they accept that they have no shot to get in the Big 10 or the SEC.
The fact that the Big 12 is even in this type of theoretical conversation compared to where it was a couple years ago, Brett, is just amazing in itself.
It's hysterical. It's not amazing. It's hysterical.
You're right.
Yeah.
It really is. By the way, I launched into the chat room, kind of lost it a little bit when I called them blue bloods. And that's another story. That's another debate about what that is. Let's just say this. They're in the club. The Clemson and Florida State, Florida State and Clemson. There are people disagreeing about that.
Yeah,
I know,
that's a debate. Yeah,
that's something for another time. So Brett, this never ends, does it? It just never, ever. It's great for what you do. It's great for what we do. I don't know how much fun it is for college football fans. I think they get tired of it, but it's been great. This just won't ever end.
It will not until we get to the finish line, and when that is, I don't know. But the finish line, I think, is we have two major conferences, and it's like the NFC and the AFC. And once that is determined and solidified, and one will be on ESPN and one will be on Fox, and that's when it'll end. And then whoever's left will do whatever they do in their division and their conference and their subdivision, and at that point it will be over. But yeah, right now it's going to continue. And the thing is, it's most frustrating, kind of what I talked to you guys about in Vegas. The thing that's most frustrating for everybody at all levels of the sport, from Greg Sankey to Brett Yormark, Tony Petitti of the Big Ten, is no one knows where this is headed. No one knows where this is going. Are we going to have these super leagues? Are we going to have this NFC, AFC type college football setup? Are players going to be employees? And go on and on. That's what's frustrating. Nobody knows where this is going to end up. And so everybody's just kind of trying to position themselves to be in the best spot. So whenever that's determined, the teams and the conferences with the most money, with the most toys, they're the ones that are going to come out on top and are going to survive long term.
And Brett, I don't think probably most of our chat needs clarity, but when you talk about Florida State, Clemson on their own, but how that would be different should it be North Carolina and Miami, that would unlock something different because that would unlock new territories, new, cable packages, things like that, right? That's why that would be different as opposed to the two of them on their lonesome where they don't add any new ground.
Well, it's kind of that, but if North Carolina and Virginia, if all of the ACC teams are available, and you're the SEC and Big Ten, then you have to go get the best inventory for those from that conference.
Gotcha. Yeah.
If they're not available, there's no reason to do it. So if all those guys are available, the SEC would love to have North Carolina and Virginia. The two main universities in each state. It's still contiguous states for the SEC. It is a new footprint for them. So it does bring value. And then at that point, it's kind of like, I was told it's kind of like a free agent draft. Then you start picking, okay, if you had these two, then we want to get these two. It kind of be like recruiting. Mm-hmm. The conferences will be recruiting the same teams, and then who signs who, we'll have to find out. And then if you don't get your top two picks, then you take the next two, and so forth and so on. So it would basically, and I think I had a quote in my story like that. Somebody said it's basically like, okay, who has the first pick, who has the second pick, mm-hmm. and then you got to worry about your inventory, and you got to worry about who your competitor's getting, and then you've got to build up your league as best you can, because at that point, it's, Katie bar the door, everybody's going to be at 20 teams. Every conference is going to be at 20, and, the ACC, I hope this doesn't happen, but they could end up like the Pac-12.
Brett, one more thing, and I know you got to go, and there's still a lot to cover today. Obviously, the SEC is a monstrous conference in every way with championships, the money, revenue, the eyeballs, etc. You were at Big 12 Media Days. I know you did like a couple of others while you were in Vegas, but is it a different type style of how they make players or coaches available there compared to how they do it with the Big 12?
Yeah, everybody does it differently. The Big 12 has great access. You can get coaches off to the side. You can do one-on-ones. I'm sure you guys had a ton of people on your show. Mm-hmm. The Mountain West was great access. You can get anybody you want. Usually with the smaller conferences, the group of five, the access is incredible. You can get anybody you want. The SEC, it means more, but it also means that if you're not an employee of ESPN, you're not going to get a sit-down one-on-one with anybody. That's just the way it is. Yep. They have the schedule grid of where everybody's speaking, and it's literally every minute, you're from 15 minutes, you're here, and then the next 15, you're here, and the next, it's you try to get a walk and talk with somebody, and even some, depending on the schools or the SIDs, they're like, oh, we can't do that. We're going to be late. So the SEC, I love coming here and covering it. It's good to see people, but, folks that watch it at home on TV, sometimes you're getting as good as access as the reporters here. Obviously, we can ask questions to people in press conference settings, but, sometimes you're working on your own angle. You don't want to broadcast it to the world. What you want to do, you want to get them off to the side. So that's not as easy at the SEC. The Big Ten, I'll be at next week in Indianapolis. I will not be at the ACC because it conflicts with the Big Ten. Both of those conferences, great access. You can get coaches one-on-one. The SEC, unfortunately, you cannot.
Brett, thank you. As always, going to you right off the top today after we discussed it. Thank you very much, Brett McMurphy, Action Network HQ, on many of the opinions. And, hey, some of that is what we discussed earlier. There are other topics to discuss, but there we are with what Brett has to say.
I mean,
and he's tied in with as much as anybody.
Yeah, I think that's more interesting than what like Jackson Arnold had to say about his offensive line or something. I mean, with all due respect, we can get our fill of that various ways. But, we had a good talk with Brett last week and, discussed some of this in just a different angle because the last couple of days have obviously poured a little bit more gasoline on the news cycle, but there's an if doing a lot of heavy lifting in what he had to say there, which is, if it was only Clemson and Florida State or if it's this, but obviously if it's something different where there is more of a jailbreak of ACC schools because one of these lawsuits is effective, then, all bets are off and whatever Greg Sankey's saying and whatever the Big Ten wants to say about their feelings towards the possibility of additions, well, that goes right out the window because suddenly some schools they really do want. Like, we don't want these as much that we're going to line up, like, first come, first serve for them. But if they're available along with some others that we like a little bit better, then, we'll be right there. And so there's a lot of if to this, and I think we kind of said that earlier. And that's also why I'm not a believer that, about the Big 12 thing as other than it's better than a 0% chance, but it's not that much greater than 0% chance. And I think Brett lays that out in the article of, like, they don't want to be in the league. But, again, neither did the four corner schools outside of Colorado. So, things happen a certain way, and you don't always do what you thought you might want to do or what you planned on doing. So if you're the Big 12, I think you just got to sit back, and the ACC and the Big 10 too. Everybody, you just got to kind of sit back, put your chess pieces wherever you feel like you need to put them. But ultimately, everybody's looking at those courtrooms and wondering what the determination is going to be on those cases to free this thing up or to keep it sludging on along to where this drags out further and further and further until ultimately there's some sort of resolution.
It is amazing. And what's her name in here? Said, you guys are still talking about Florida State. It's been this way since the end of the year. That was about whether they belonged in the championship playoff. And they have become kind of like, but whether they should have played or been in the semifinals is absolutely an argument and a discussion that had to be made. And still people have different opinions on that. But if it affects the landscape of college football, and it is worth talking about. And I hope to God eventually things settle down when we don't have to worry about it, but I don't think that's going to happen over the next 5 or 6 years.
Look, history is littered with small things that turned into big things, and ultimately, I mean, it's probably a medium thing, but Florida State getting really irritated about what happened to them in the championship threw gasoline on this fire because the emotions around it made it to where we're like, well, we better strike with the irons hot because they're never going to have more support within their own community to do this as they did right then because people were out with torches and pitchforks. And torches and pitchforks, never really a good thing. It always ends up with, Frankenstein's monster wreaking havoc. But that's how people react to things, especially currently. And so because they reacted when they did, now they're in it.
Yeah, and I actually think Florida State's got much better landing spots in front of them than it's being portrayed right now. But to whoever the one that messes that, well, this guy right here is a Florida State alum. So we do talk Florida State, and it is one of the more interesting stories going on right now. And here's the thing. I know you probably want to make it about Florida State because you're a Florida State fan. If this was Miami doing the same thing, we'd be talking about Miami. Yeah. If this was Texas Tech doing it, we'd be talking about Texas Tech. But you screamed and threw a fit and acted like a child that wants what they want, and they want it now. And so don't be surprised now that the microscope is on you when there's all of this talk going on because you yourself created the majority of the talk by responding the way that you did to the playoff snub. Now, nobody's saying that wasn't deserved. Nobody's saying that they maybe didn't do the right thing in the long run, and nobody's saying that they wouldn't be PO'd to eternity if the shoe was on their foot. But the whole reason it's as much of a topic as it is right now is primarily because of Florida State. And Florida State alone, because although Clemson is taking some of the same moves, they have been much more in the weeds and quiet with how they've gone about things. There's little things here and there, but Florida State's been the one at the jail bars, rattling them, trying to see if they will come free, and there's no denying that, and that's why, yes, the spotlight is on you, Florida State, because of a situation that you in part have helped create.
Yeah, it has been a part of the landscape for quite some time.
And I don't think they're joining the Big 12.
Not going anywhere. No.
So to that person, we're not just throwing that out there.
If the Big 12 was not even possible, we would still discuss it because of what it means for college football. Let's a couple of more notes, and then Jason Shear. Here, you talk about a troublemaker. He's coming up a little bit after 4. Kirby Smart saying that players who have had some violations, driving-related violations, have actually there has been discipline within the program. But this made me go, wait a minute. The NIL collective has fined them.
Yeah, okay, and I'm sure that's been effective. And he said, look, if you've got an idea for how to get this to stop, I do. Kick one of them off. You haven't done that yet. That's where he hasn't gone.
Tell me somebody else but he brings this up. How many programs have suspended players in college football's history because of a traffic violation?
Not many, but not many have the run that they have. So he can try to hide in that. And that kind of like shields him from like, well, Mike Gundy didn't do it. Mike Gundy didn't have players that were in an accident that killed somebody a year ago. He didn't have people continually doing this. It's a bigger problem in your place than it is in other places. So you have to respond to it differently.
I'll tell you what. There's an audio video thing of Nick Saban, and this, I don't know if it was last year or whatever, about players when they get in trouble. And Kirby Smart, remember, was with him for a long time, is of the opinion, barring something where he has no choice about the suspension, that their job is to keep these young men involved, and it means on the team or whatever, and the worst thing you could do is take them off the team.
Urban Meyer said that too.
Okay, well, that's okay.
Okay, so again, I could.
Okay,
everybody's got mosquitoes,
but Bobby
right?
Bowden did not.
Bobby Bowden kicked some people off. Yeah, I mean, he did.
Was it
Peter? Forced to it. But yes. But yeah, most people wasn't a dadgum suspension. But did they have a rash of the same thing happening again and again and again?
Well, we don't know that because the media coverage then was nothing compared to what it is now with social media.
Well, this is also why we shouldn't what about their situation with everybody else's and like, well, they didn't do it, so they shouldn't have to answer for it. And, well, they didn't kill anybody, so they're I mean, like – Kirby Smart obviously did a hell of a job getting people to look around the rest of the college football and not so much at his program. So his deflection tactics worked because now we're going, well, Mike Gundy didn't do anything with Ollie Gordon.
Wait a minute, but he didn't say they wouldn't be suspended. He said he declined to specify what the suspensions will be, but did mention that there would be some.
I'm not saying – I'm saying that you need to pick one and make a sacrificial lamb.
With the backup right tackle?
It doesn't matter. Kick him off the team. Like – kick them off the team because, it's like bugs in the house, right? We all have bugs in our house, or like, you have the pest control guy to come and spray. Well, some people can have it done every so often, and the bugs are fine. Some people have an infestation, and you need to work a little harder. Right now, he's got a problem.
They suspended wide receiver Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint.
Yeah,
good player. They suspended him.
Yeah.
They don't know yet what they're going to do with Travis Etienne or Mondin, who was a recent.
Yeah, I thought there was some resolution on the Etienne. I think his charges got dropped last I saw like a week ago.
Yeah. He probably did pre-trial intervention.
Probably, yeah.
Which, whether he's a star running back or not, that's available to people because of the way the law is. Yeah, they're one thing away, another tragedy. Not just speeding tickets, another tragedy away from this becoming, oh, my God, now you have no defense.
All right, I really don't care a whole lot about this story in general. Like, I don't have super strong opinions and, like, riles me up because I kind of already know and exactly what I figured was going to happen has happened. It's like, well, what about so-and-so? And, just dodge it until somebody else dies.
Yeah.
And that's basically what they're setting themselves up for. And, look, hopefully that doesn't happen. And hopefully – just guys continue to get speeding tickets or didn't have their turn signal on, and that's all that it amounts to. But somebody already has. And he's basically setting it up to where the only way this blows up further is somebody does have to die before they go, all right, well, yeah, okay, now we have to react a certain type of way. You know what I mean? Like, that's how it's starting to set itself up for, and that's what I don't like about it is, like, does somebody else have to die for you to take this more seriously?
Okay.
And that's what everybody's trying to kind of get to right now is like, no, you need to take it seriously now so that someone else doesn't die as a result of
we really don't know what they've put in place.
Right.
Just like Oklahoma in the late 80s.
Right.
Nebraska in the mid-90s. There have been Miami.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting, most of the connections to those schools, all of them were freaking great.
Well,
it's almost like you need players like that on your roster that have an edge to them. At the same time, it could come back to bite you.
Yeah, you can have an edge, though. Doesn't mean you need to get behind the wheel at 1.28 alcohol level. So, you continued on and kind of interrupted my train of thought there. I had something I wanted to respond with, and I'm trying to catch it, and I don't think that I can. But
sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I just, you're just setting yourself up for it to be a situation that becomes way worse and way bigger than it needs to be. And I think everybody just kind of, sure, there's Tennessee fans that just want to see them punish guys and kick off good players. There's absolutely that element. But take all that out if you possibly can, and I do often, and just look at it from a human standpoint. Kirby, some bad stuff's already happened. Nobody's saying that you have to change who you are. Nobody's saying you can't welcome certain kids in your program, but you just have to be mindful of, like the road this is going down, no pun intended, is like you're setting this up to get even worse because you're not viewed as taking it as seriously as you should be. So then when you ultimately do, is that because another person has died and now, like, would it be surprising to you? Like, it would be shocking if any other program, and I know other programs have been affected recently, but if you were to have like a major drunk driving accident, like Pittsburgh, it'd be shocking, right? You'd just be like, how horrible, if it happened at Georgia, would you be surprised?
Unfortunately.
Exactly my point. Exactly my point.
Yeah. That's why, like, when he says, well, all these other schools do this, look, that's fine if you're trying to judge, like, a minor problem that you might have popped up. Like, he should have said that a year ago. But now that all this has continued to happen, it doesn't matter what anybody else does. It matters how he deals with it.
Yeah.
Did you guys hear Carsten Beck's response, who has a Lamborghini? Somebody said about driving a fast car and sent the wrong message. Beck took umbrage and said, let's clarify. I don't like fast cars, but I like cars. Obviously, yes, my car is fast 100%, but I don't drive like an idiot. This is the quarterback of the national, obviously, it's funny to talk about, but it's a serious issue on our team. But also, we have hundreds of players, and a large percentage of our guys are very focused, very on top of that. But obviously, there are guys who made mistakes, and there are consequences for that. And then he mentions the tragedy. He gets it, and that's a leader. That's a captain. Yeah. It's good to hear him say that.
Yeah, no, and that's what your captain, your leader should say. And I think he's sticking up for his guys, as he should, because this isn't just a Georgia problem, but it's very much their problem right now because they've been in the news as often as they have been for it. So, yeah, nobody's calling for Kirby's job unless you're, like, living in Knoxville or, Auburn or somewhere like that. Certainly not on this show. Just like, man, just do what you need to do before we're talking about another really tragic accident, because this next time we won't be surprised, and that'll just magnify what you should have done before to try and prevent those things as best as possible. And if you're doing that and it's just not satiating the public, then that's fine, so long as you are doing that and doing the most that you can to prevent that situation.
Sandra Green, who loves our show.
Most days.
The minority of days, said, hey, don't forget Sarkisian kicked a player out. He did last year. Somebody was like sitting in the car, whatever, and he's gone. And it's that simple. A DWI compared to a speeding ticket, there's a big difference there, but really in a way, it's reckless. It's reckless. So good to bring that up. And many schools and programs have done that, and they should continue to be there, very smart about it. Later on, we'll get into other issues going on, not issues, the stories in the SEC. Coming up next, Jason Shear, Wildcat Authority. We got to know him back after all of the innuendos of the Pac-12 and what was going to happen, and were the four corner schools, was Arizona, were they on board or not? And down to the end, it was like, probably not. But in the end, they're now joining the conference this year. But he also had something on what the Big 12 feels like is in their future. He's next. This is 365 Sports. TexasBeefHouse.com. They have an online auction going on today and tomorrow. You can go to TexasBeefHouse.com. It'll pop up on your screen. You could also go to bidonbeef.com and will have all of what they have available. For example, if I go to a store tonight, wherever it might be, and I want to buy a couple of ribeyes or a pack of New York strips or a bunch of fillets, I'm going to pay what the store sticker has on the package, right? Whether it's one, whether it's a choice or select, prime, or Wagyu. TexasBeefHouse.com is Wagyu. Farm raised in East Texas, TexasBeefHouse.com raises their own cattle. They go through all of the process to make sure that it's clean as it can possibly be, staying away from some of the stuff you might get inside of beef. On the online auctions, which is going on today and tomorrow, and twice a month, like going as far as I know, you get to choose what you want to pay, not what the sticker price is. For example, let's say you want 20 pounds of steak. They'll give you the minimum price, and it's lower than what it's valued at. You can bid on what you want. If you get the bid, you get the beef. You get the package. It's that simple. Great family, great company, just outside of Tyler. TexasBeefHouse.com. And don't forget to use SICM10 when you buy anything over $100, and you get 10% off the price at TexasBeefHouse.com. Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com. From their pasture to your plate, premium quality Texas farm-raised beef. Samantha, you've had more and more online auctions, and you have another one coming up in the middle of this month.
On July 17th, that will open our next steak auction, and it closes the next day on July 18th. About 48 hours of tomahawk, New York strip, flat iron, ground beef, both Angus and Wagyu. It's a lot of fun to get on. You just get on to bidonbeef.com, create an account, and it'll walk you through all the steps that you have to do in order to bid. Everything ships for free nationwide in the lower 48 states.
The flat iron steak to me is underrated. Fajitas, it tastes so good.
The flat iron is my absolute favorite. And then, of course, your tomahawk, that's just a showstopper. It's something exciting to put on the grill for everybody to see. Each steak is about anywhere from 3 to 4 pounds. I'm telling you what, it'll feed pretty much a whole family. A 4-pound tomahawk feeds the 6 of us.
The 48 states ship free. Go to TexasBeefHouse.com. Again, premium quality Texas farm-raised beef, Wagyu, Angus. It is amazing. July 17th and 18th, tomahawk, New York strip, flat iron, ground beef, Angus, and Wagyu. You really are doing these auctions more and more frequently.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of great feedback. A lot of people love to get online. The ending is what we call a horse race finish. So at 6 p.m. when the auction ends, if anybody has been bidding in that last 2 minutes, it keeps the auction open for 2 more minutes, and that continues until all bidding has stopped. So that's kind of the exciting thing to watch at the very end is, the timer reset because people are getting on there and they're making sure that they're getting that lot that they want. So this is your best bet to get the best price, and it's a price that you want to pay, not what we're setting the price, and you're getting it in bulk. So you're getting more than just one package of steaks. You're getting, depending on which lot, anywhere from 4 to 8 packages of steaks.
Go to TexasBeefHouse.com, July 17th and 18th, the auction. And you can find much more information, bidonbeef.com. And don't forget the discount if you put hashtag SICM365.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Kasasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month Shear certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Kasasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street, and now now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
409, this is 365 Sports. We appreciate you joining us every day or whenever you do. And if you do, please hit the like. And also, if you have not subscribed, we appreciate that too. All of our sponsors and what they do to help us and what we have here every single day. Craig Smoke, Paul Catalina, I'm David Smoke. We're joined by Jason Shear, Wildcat Authority. We've known Jason for about 2 years, really ever since some of the speculation about what was going to happen with the Pac-12, what the Big 12 was doing. That was back when USC and UCLA bolted for or announced they would leave for the Big Ten. And he was also one well ahead of the game when it comes to the Four Corner schools and their future, even though that was very dicey until the end. And then Jason, over the weekend, had this. According to sources, there's an internal belief in the Big 12 that Florida State, Clemson are joining or likely to join the conference within the next year or so. Not this week, not this season, but at some point there at least is a feeling. Jason, thanks for your time. And just like what you did with the Four Corner schools, I see where a lot of people went, damn, that's great. And then there's some that want to say that you're just an idiot.
Yeah, I learned how this whole thing's going to play out last time throughout the process. You're going to get people that are going to believe it and trust you, and there's going to be people that aren't going to believe what's happening at any level until it happens right in front of them. But it's fun.
Jason, there are a lot of moving parts for this to even become a reality. Where does their confidence come in?
I think the biggest reason for their confidence is they believe that the court cases and all the legislation and everything going on right now, Florida State and Clemson are confident it'll go their way. The Big 12 shares that confidence. And then the SEC and the Big 10, from what I understand and from what the Big 12 understands, they're not dying to add these schools. It's not really that much of a priority. And that's when the Big 12 would come in and say, look, you're definitely our priority. We would love to have you. We'll figure out a way to get you in the conference. And so the Big 12 feels that they're in a position to add those two schools and maybe even more down the road.
Jason, is there anything to the timing of just, media day starting up? Big 12 had theirs last week. Your Mark had the open for business comments. And then, here you are, McMurphy today as well. Is this new confidence, or is this just something that maybe people feel a little bit more confident in putting out there publicly?
Probably a little bit of both. I had heard kind of whispers about it being a possibility, nothing crazy, but those whispers definitely picked up in the last, since Big 12 Media Day, and the conversations I've had have become a little bit more serious than they were previously. And I think timing is everything. Also, we have the SEC Media Days going on, and a lot of the discussion is about the Big 12. And, your Mark isn't done. He's going to, and he pretty much said it at Media Day that he wants, the reach of the Big 12 to increase. He wants it to be at the forefront of college football, just like the SEC and Big 10. And here we are. So I'm sure some of it is planned with leaks to other people and things like that. And I think also there's, some substantial things going on behind the scenes that would make that confidence within the Big 12 increase.
So how much more money are we talking about? And this is way down the road, but let's get to the reason why Florida State or Clemson want to leave where they are. They're upset because they're not making enough money. Would they make much more or bring too much more or enough, I guess, to the Big 12 to scratch everybody's itch?
Yeah, I know private equity is part of the conversation, where that would come in. I'll be honest, I don't know the full details of the private equities. The Big 12 guys have been, sources and things like that have been very, very quiet on it because it's kind of new to college football, and I think Big 12 is deeper with those negotiations and considerations than other conferences are. But there's definitely a realization that, look, like, it has to be worth it financially for everyone. I mean, FSU and Clemson aren't leaving the ACC just to go get paid the same amount. It doesn't make sense for them to do it. They wouldn't be trying to get out of contracts and things like that. And so At the same time, you have the schools in the Big 12, especially the ones that have been there, that are going to say, look, we need more money too. And so Yormark has to figure that out. I would assume it would be a pretty decent number. The question then becomes, we got to do this all over again, similar to what we did with the Pac-12, which is TV negotiations, et cetera. The only wild card being the private equity. How much money, if that happens, what it looks like, and all that stuff.
It is interesting. I think private equity, you guys would agree, is like the one thing he shuts down on. Like, he'll talk about it's pretty much, he'll even entertain the realignment thing to a certain extent, but you bring up private equity last week, and it was almost like a non-starter for Brett Yormark. Still a lot of secrecy about that.
I think it's because he knows a lot more, and I came out of that interview last week, Jason, Craig, and Paul, saying that's going to happen. The way he didn't say much, but I just felt like what he did say, which was not much, it made me realize that that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I came away talking to people that, I absolutely think private equity is going to happen. I would be surprised if it doesn't. And I think he has a very good idea of what that's going to look like, but he's not going to tell anyone, because what happens if other conferences get involved or things like that? And he's very quiet about it. You're 100% right. That is very tight-lipped. He didn't really want to talk about it, even though he had the stage to do so. But I think he has a good handle on what he wants to do with it and what it'll look like. But he doesn't want anyone to know, or else, what happens if these other conferences get involved or say, hey, we have to beat the Big 12 to this or that. So it makes sense for him not to really talk too much about it.
The term he used with us I don't want to say we pressed him on it, but I followed up with, the concerns is that it's going to be like what you see private equity in, recently, obviously, with Red Lobster is like the big story that people see, that it's going to be that. Jason, he used the term, it's going to have to be bespoke to the Big 12, which makes me think of like, I made a desk that's unique, not, private equity, but that's how he described it.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a Big 12 deal. Like, he doesn't want private equity to, it's got to be unique to the Big 12. It can't be something where, we'll dabble in the Big 12, we'll dabble in this with college athletics a little bit here or there. He wants it to be, look, we are the Big 12. We want to deal with whoever it is, and obviously your fingerprints are going to be on it, but we don't want, we want the full focus of the private equity to make sure that it benefits the Big 12, and it's not a little bit there, a little bit there. And before you know it, the Big 12 is losing focus with the private equity because eyes are elsewhere. He wants to make sure, I think, that whatever he does, because private equity is a risk. We've seen it before. Whatever he does puts the Big 12 in the best financial position that it can be in.
Jason, I know a lot of the details are not known, but what kind of an appetite do you think, or do you gather, the Big 12 has? I mean, Florida State and Clemson are obvious. It's also obvious that isn't the highest percentage shot they could shoot necessarily, or the one that ends up they end up able to take, depending on how things fall. But how much of an appetite, when they gander over at the ACC, do you think that they have, based on what you know?
Yeah, I think there's other schools that are 100% going to get consideration. I mean, like you said, it starts with Florida State and Clemson. But I'm confident in saying that the Big 12 has interest in, Louisville, Miami, NC State, Virginia Tech. Those are probably the bulk of schools that I would look at. And it's, again, we don't know what it's going to look like. I'm not saying the Big 12 could add all those schools, but I know that if you were to ask me a group of 5 in the ACC that are getting looked at, 5 or 6, it would be those.
Jason, what were your impressions? We didn't get to talk to you much last week. What were your impressions of how the league is moving forward with the new schools now that everybody's been together?
It was fun. It was definitely a different atmosphere than the Pac-12 last year. Was in a nightclub in Vegas. It was kind of a weird venue and setup, but I had a lot of fun at Media Day and talking to the players. One thing that sticks out to me is Arizona safety Gunnar Maldonado said, "Look, like, I don't know any of these guys. Like, part of today, he said, I'm spending meeting other guys and teams. Like, he knows the guys at Colorado or Utah or ASU, but he doesn't know anyone else. So he's like, I'm going around, I'm just introducing myself, talking to guys, and they're excited. At the end of the day, football's football, but there's definitely excitement within the team saying, look, they've never been in these road environments. Arizona's played against BYU a few years ago, but it wasn't in Provo, and Arizona doesn't have matchups against these teams. So when they go on the road and they go to these other places, these are new experiences for them, and especially for the guys who it's their last year in college football, they seem pretty excited about the whole thing.
Craig, you said you saw Jason as you were walking out, correct?
Like we went straight to the airport. I told Jason and his wife I had to go, but I did stop and say hello right as we were leaving. Yeah,
I don't remember, Paul, that Jason, who we made famous.
Yeah, I talked to him. I saw we were at the 50-yard line when I talked to Jason, on day one. I sought out Jason on day one. I just want this.
Oh, so it looks like somebody else is guilty of not saying hello.
Why would I? I wanted to see how much we have to connection, and that's why I did not search him out.
Yeah,
and vice versa. Jason, the Big 12 with the 16 teams. Here we are. It's a month away, less than a month away from practices and then games, etc. Could you give me emphatically who you think end up in the 5 teams that compete to play for the Big 12 championship game?
No, probably not. But, if I were to pick 5 teams, I think I feel good about Arizona, Kansas, Utah. Those are probably my 3. Kansas State, 4, and I think it gets a little Oklahoma State, Iowa State. Those are probably the ones. I want to be surprised if UCF. I think UCF is kind of my sleeper team. I think they could absolutely finish higher than people think, and it's one of the fun things about the conference. Brett Brennan said, he goes, look, the thing about the Big 12 is we could line up and lose to anyone, or we could line up and beat anyone. And I think that every school in the conference feels that way, that it's pretty equal, and because of that, it's probably going to be one of the more entertaining conferences in the country this year.
Jason, you know how this is. You cover a team on a daily basis, and you just see them and you know them better than others know them, even if those others try to study as much as possible. I get the feeling based on just Twitter, hearing your podcast, people are sleeping on Arizona in your mind despite the coaching change and all of that. Is that accurate to say you feel that way?
Yeah, 100%. And I completely understand people aren't familiar with Brett Brennan, San Jose State. The record doesn't look great. I think if people take a deeper look at what he was working with at San Jose State, they would wonder how he won as many games as he did. I mean, there were times where the coaching staff had to pay for players' meals. It was pretty crazy, but they returned most of their offense. They have a really good quarterback in Noah Fafita. They have arguably the best wide receiver in the nation, and T-Mac. Their defense is good, and while they lost some guys, I just personally feel that they did a nice job replacing them. And there's questions like every team. I just feel more confident that Arizona will find answers to those questions as, maybe opposed to a few other teams.
So how at home did you feel in terms of just seeing other media and getting to know people and all of that? I mean, it felt like from the other side of things, it felt like Arizona was a fit and Utah a fit and ASU and so on. I don't know. I liked the blend that we saw last week in Vegas amongst the media and just the whole contingent.
It always felt like at Pac-12, like if you covered USC or you covered UCLA or you were associated with those schools, you didn't really relate to some of the other schools in the conference. And I don't hold it against those guys, but Big 12 was just different. Like you mentioned, it felt like natural. It felt like a fit. I didn't feel out of place. I don't think the players or the coaches felt out of place. It almost felt, there was a new excitement, but at the same time, it almost felt like it wasn't that new. Like we had been there before because the teams were all, the coaches were complimentary. Everyone spoke highly about the 4 corners. I found out Brent Brennan, for instance, you talked to him about Big 12 coaches. He's like, yeah, I used to work with Kalani Sitake. We're really close friends, and some other coaches, and it just kind of felt like Arizona belonged, and the players were accepted, and it was just a fun environment all the way around.
All right, so we'll get out of here with this. Just to follow up on where we started talking, just for your own clarity and our listeners' clarity, you put out there what you know about the Big 12's feel. You've also, I think, been pretty adamant on this is not next week, this is not next month, this is something that is going to take a little bit of a time. Would I be saying that correctly?
Yeah, this is nowhere near being over. There are a lot of moving pieces and a lot of things that need to be done before we kind of go with the next step. It's very, very preliminary. It's just that basically what I said is the Big 12 feels good. as it stands currently, basically.
How much did you chew on the fact that even though it's not imminent, it may be a long time down the road? You felt good about what you had, obviously, because that's what you are as a journalist. But was there a part of you that said, man, this still has too many hurdles to go over for me to report it?
Yeah, I mean, you think about that stuff, but at the end of the day, when if I feel my source is good enough and they're in a position where they're telling me that, I'm going to go with it, and with the understanding that if things change, some people will be mad at me, but as long as I'm confident at the time of reporting it, and I try to state it as accurately and honestly as I can, I feel okay about going with it.
Well, you reporting it makes a difference. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Jason Shear, Wildcat Authority, on his report from Sunday evening about internal belief in the Big 12 about FSU and Clemson likely to join the conference within the next year or two or so is actually what he put out on his Twitter feed.
Yeah, I'll be honest, when he did that, I kind of hated it originally because I was like, oh, God, does he realize what he just started up? What he added to, and I'm sure that he did. So part of me was like, oh, no. And then at the same time, the fact that it was from him, actually lent credence to talking about it and at least discussing it. I think, though, that there's probably a Florida State fan watching who's like, I can't believe they're even entertaining. Like, just the idea, I see that response to, like, Brett McMurphy's article or anybody that's even giving a hint that anything could happen outside of them being in the SEC or the Big Ten, basically. And so you have your doubts. I think Paul has his doubts about just the whole idea of the Big 12. I do, too. I've said it now 5 times on the show. But it's a greater than 0. I don't know if it's greater than 10% chance.
Yeah.
But it is greater than 0, and so that's what makes it worthwhile to discuss from a Big 12 perspective. But I still think it's a pipe dream. The fact that you've even got a chance to even say there's some semblance to it is pretty miraculous in its own right. Now, to actually pull it off would be a really true miracle that I'm not expecting ultimately, but who knows how the next year plays out,
And look, if you're going to compare conferences, and I'll even put the Big Ten in this, like outside of Florida State and Clemson playing, Nebraska, the Pac-12 schools, Ohio State and Michigan, none of those, like Florida State playing Maryland, they did that in the past, but Florida State and Purdue doesn't do anything for me, much like, but
I get what you're saying.
But like, so well, I'm just talking about like the fans complaining about like looking down at the games.
Yeah.
But Florida State, the ACC to Big 12, like, what's the damn difference? Like, honestly, like, so if you're going to be like, oh, well, we don't want to play Texas Tech, you play Georgia Tech, they're worse. Like,
right.
Like, come on.
I think there's for the Big Ten at least, there's that real history. There's the academic snobbery. There's those things that you can point to. There's the massive amounts of money. That's at the very top of the list. I also think, too, that while they're not a blue blood, Oregon is a big brand, and you add USC, and you add Ohio State, and you add Michigan, and all of a sudden you look around, and there's like 6 or 7 teams that are pretty damn top tier, as opposed to the Big 12, where the argument is like, who is in the top tier, if at all? They've got a bunch of, at worst, like really solid Tier B, Tier 1B schools. Oklahoma State. I mean, anybody given the year, like a TCU and Oklahoma State, so on, people that can be good. Utah, but like the real pedigree, they don't have that necessarily. And whereas you'd have about a handful of those schools, I can see where that's more tempting.
No, but like to me, like, yes, the Big Ten has it, but like if they're going to look down, like why would we play the Big 12 or like leave?
Right.
To me, I think that outside of like, I mean, even like North Carolina's not a football power. Like they're not,
right.
That. So
yeah, we need to like remind people of that every time we start talking about North Carolina. That's as much basketball and just the state in itself and all that related as football.
Overall, a phenomenal athletic
not football,
but they're not a football powerhouse.
No, absolutely not.
They're good. I mean, but they're not great.
Depending on the year.
Yeah, but like they're not legendary football program. So if Florida State and Clemson are going to come play games here, like, I would enjoy the hell out of Florida State, Oklahoma State, or Clemson and Utah, or whatever. Like Florida State and UCF, well, bring it on. Let's do it. The vibe at both places, I'll tell you, very similar. And yeah, I'd be fine with that. Like again, I'm not going to be mad about it. Just win titles. Win titles, win the conference, get in the playoff, hold the lipstick trophy up. That's what I want. It doesn't really matter where they are.
But if they weren't included, I know 12 teams.
Yeah.
But if they weren't included and they won the ACC as an unbeaten team.
Yeah. Well, no.
Do you feel like they're going to have a stronger case?
Well, it's an expanded playoff now.
Yeah, no, I said that. It's 12, so,
Right.
I mean, that obviously makes
Well, then
a
there's
difference.
no way an undefeated is getting left out.
Yeah. That's true.
Now, do they jump out? Part of the other reason they probably don't want to go to the Big 12 is the same reason a Big 12 team wouldn't want to go to the ACC is.
What? You don't think so?
And here's why. If it comes down to getting that second or third playoff team, we know how that's going to go for the Big 12 and ACC.
Well, here's the thing,
So
though. Why would you
the
go
same.
to a conference that their rights don't end until 2036?
No. I'm just talking about
Football-wise.
if the situations were reversed. Yeah. So if we were talking about, Oklahoma State and Tech being furious with the Big 12 and, wanting to join one of those power leagues, and they'd be worried about the same thing. Like the Big 12 and the ACC have the same problem in the 12-team playoff that they kind of had in the 4-team playoff. It's just less, they'll at least have a team in. But when it comes down to, you could have a really elite year with 3 teams that deserve to get in, but if the SEC has 4, your third team's not getting in, or if they have 5, your second team's not getting in.
Can we go a segment without bringing it up? It's hard not to. It's hard.
Bring what up?
That all of this. It is
sure
fun.
You're steering the wheel. You
No,
got the steering wheel.
No, I'm not. I don't even do the rundown anymore.
This was you. This is all you.
So here's my question. How much do you really think this is? How do you think this is going to happen by 20? The Big 12's new money kicks in 2025? Is that right, the new deal?
Yeah.
So is that
I think the ACC is not going to let this happen for a while. There's no impetus for them to let it happen.
I think
unless the court case where they can drag that out.
I mean, I don't know how to predict a court case. Like, they could be on the verge of a settlement right now for all we know, and they could announce that tomorrow for all we know, or it could drag out another year for all we know. So that's impossible to predict. I think ultimately, and this is based on just nothing but feel and reading the tea leaves, I think everybody's posturing, everybody's politicking. I think the Big 12 is doing its damnedest to put itself in a great spot. But I think ultimately, this goes, I assume, the way of everybody being freed. And if that's the case, then yeah, I see the scattering of the Virginia, UNC, whatever contingent to the SEC and the Clemson, FSU to that, or to the Big 10 or whatever. And then I see the Big 12 getting the rest of what they would like to take as far as your NC States, your Vatex, and those types of schools. That would be my prediction ultimately, because I just don't think that FSU and Clemson don't have a spot when all is said and done. I don't care what. I mean, all due respect to Brett McMurphy, I know what the situation is now, but they're not deciding right now. They're deciding maybe in a year, maybe in 6 months.
You're saying that if they go to a super whatever that is, there's no way Clemson and Florida State are left out.
Yeah, I don't think they're in the Big 12. I don't think they're going to be in the Big 12, and I think that the Big 12 will stand to benefit, but I don't think it'll be versus adding Florida State and Clemson, because I think that would be too appetizing. Even with, you've already got South. I know all the things of why they wouldn't want it. I know why the Big 10 and academics and all that, but I just don't see in this era of valuable brands letting 2 pretty valuable football brands not only pick them up and take advantage of the rivalries and all that would come with that, but giving them over to the Big 12 to only further strengthen them when you've kind of done everything to sort of kill them off or leave them in the dust. You know what I mean? Not that you have to worry about them nipping at your heels all the time, but that would certainly be a game changer in terms of the perception of the Big 12. So that's where my head is. I've said all along with all these different rumors. Like, I remember last year when Oregon State was joining the Big 12 and Washington State was joining the Big 12 and all this other stuff. I'm pretty cautious in just plummeting into an opinion. But yeah, if you ask me right now, I think that that's the most logical, because it's hard for me to picture Florida State and Clemson in the Big 12.
There's no question the Big 12 wins that. They win that deal if they can get from Knight Seminole, huge FSU fan. It's sad that we get tied up with all this new conference realignment, NIL deals, recruiting. I miss the 90s.
I mean, that's why we stayed away from this for a really long time. Like, I mean, we could have easily have played fantasy matchmaker every day, but a lot of it just seemed like BS or just wish casting or however you want to refer to it. And so we typically stayed away from it. With the Pac, it was different because the Pac, there was meat on that bone. Like, we knew it. We knew it. Whereas with this, for a few months, it's been a lot of legal jockeying and like what if this, but perhaps like all that kind of stuff, but not as much of a base to stand on. And now that I think that there's some tune changing in the reporting, that's what makes it this week. And these last couple of days, as media days get going, that's what makes it interesting and worth stopping down on. But I think if you listen through this, we're all of the opinion that the Big 12 is not getting these teams, or it would take some act of God.
No, there you go.
Yeah, but it's still a situation where they could until they don't. And so who the heck knows how things play out, and that's why it's interesting to at least kick the tires and follow up with Jason.
Will this even be a discussion as much at all once we start kicking off games?
Not as much, absolutely not, because football will be here. Yeah. And we stuck to that. I mean, we've gone through the Big 12 like 3 times already, as far as pre-spring, post-spring, pre-media days, post-media days, all that. We've talked plenty of football. But this had enough of a little bit of gas poured on it to be interesting this week.
A couple more notes, and we'll take this for a little while. Craig's off the radar around the corner. Conundrum, the problem is that when the Big Ten or the SEC want either one, they'll go get them.
Well, that's what I said from the very beginning with all these rumors was, okay, let's say like there was the whole – first of all, there's so many things behind the scenes that need to fall a certain way for this to happen. Like that's the thing. So we get Jason to I asked him at the very end for a reason of like, so to be clear, you're not saying this is now or immediate. This is like a year at least down the line. So
Which
there's
is
a lot
what
of
he
things.
said in his tweet.
Right. So there's a lot of things that have to happen a certain way. But that's what I was saying at the very top about like, okay, sounds great. They're not let in right now. They have to have somewhere to go. They go to the Big 12. What did I say though? Are they signing a grant of rights? Are they going to be in there for 10 years? Or is this like a temporary thing? Because if it's a temporary thing, then what all good hell does it do for anybody?
If it's a temporary thing, you don't do it.
Exactly right. Exactly.
You can't because it's
exactly my point.
The drama doesn't stop.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Kyle Visser, I know Craig loves this topic. He acts like he doesn't, but realignment is his first love.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No.
Let me tell you something about Craig. Craig doesn't secretly love anything. He either loves it publicly or doesn't love it.
There you go.
That's very true.
There's no like Craig's not like, at his apartment like with some kind of secret thing going on. That's not Craig. Craig like he either likes it or he doesn't.
Right.
And there's not any like he doesn't need to secretly love anything.
Yeah, no, I think that's I've never thought about it that way, but yeah, like if just ask me if I like it or not, and you'll know the truth because I'll shoot you straight. But yeah, I don't have any hidden hobby that I'm keeping from everybody or anything like that. I just think it's interesting, and had it not been for Brett McMurphy or Jason or a combination of them both, I don't think we would have spent as much time on it today. Clearly, we wouldn't have spent much time on it today. I think it's interesting to a point. I don't want to talk about it every single day.
Yeah.
And I don't want to play like the 50 years down the road game because I do prefer facts and things that are based in fact. And so that's why having a little bit of a reporter throw his weight behind something, okay, now I feel like it's fun to talk about because there's some legitimacy to it. All due respect to, I guess people who've been talking about it otherwise with more of just kind of taking it out of thin air. But I prefer it when there's some meat on the bone, and that's what it feels like. But I think I've already said 50 times I don't think this is happening the way that it's being talked about.
Retired stockbroker was asking about who are the original 8. I brought that up because those are the teams that have given a little bit to allow the expansion. It's West Virginia and TCU, Kansas and Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Tech.
Yep.
Those are the 8. It's with West Virginia joining the conference when TCU did, and then the 6 that were a part of the original Big 12 back when it was formed in 1996 with the, I guess you could say, the bringing together of the Southwest Conference who survived, and then also the Big 8.
And that's the thing is like...
And everybody in the Big 8 made it. Everybody in the Big 8 conference made the cut.
Well, Colorado now, right?
Well, they made the Big 12 cut.
Yeah.
It was the Southwest Conference with left behind Rice and left behind Houston and left behind TCU.
And SMU.
And SMU.
Yeah.
It was the Big 8 that was the one, no, we're all 8 coming. And then the Southwest Conference had the 4 that joined them.
Yeah.
Texas Tech.
A&M.
Baylor and A&M.
Yeah. And that was the first time of before that happened was Texas to the Pac-12 and A&M to the SEC because Arkansas just joined to the SEC, and A&M had a groundswell of support then from their people. Join the SEC, get away from Texas. And at that point, things were so tied up politically that they said, wherever you go, you're going together.
Yeah.
And then, and that's, that's different now.
That's in the conversation now. Still, like people waiting. NC State can't be let. It's like, yeah, they can.
Believe me, they can't. Look, Rick Perry did not do a lot of. He's not known for his prowess as a politician, but the one thing he did do was, because he's a former Yale leader and he was the governor, when the A&M people came to him and said, we're going to the SEC, he was like, whatever, let's do it. He didn't even tie it down. Like it was, go ahead.
Brett Bingham, you guys might as well start telling FSU fans to get ready to be learning the truck stop company.
Get ready to learn Big 12, buddy.
That was a Pac-12 condescending thought.
Yeah. You know what? The fact that I could go on any given year and see Florida State twice within 3-4 hours of me, or 1 minute from here, I would love it.
Yeah,
I would love it.
Okay, Craig Smoke's off the radar, just around the corner. Here's one video clip of the SEC coordinator of officials, John McDade, was asked a question about, will horns down be a penalty?
We've talked a lot about that in our officiating group since I've taken over in the 2020 season. And to be unsportsmanlike conduct, I'm asking my officials to use a framework of judgment where the act to be a foul needs to be in one of three buckets. It needs to be taunting an opponent, it needs to be a travesty of the game, or it needs to otherwise compromise our ability to manage the game. What's a travesty of the game, right? It's just a phrase. I ask my officials, the act itself needs to be offending to the senses. If you took that act out of a football stadium and did it in a shopping mall or a grocery store, would it offend the senses to a majority of the reasonable people in the area, right? That signal would not, right? You might have some people that share that signal with you if you did that at a grocery store or in a shopping mall, depending where you are. So it's very much, we're going to evaluate it in context. I could see a scenario, I want to be very cautious about using hypotheticals, right? But I could see a scenario where an opponent of Texas makes a big play in celebrating with his teammates, possibly going back to the sideline, they're giving the signal. It's not taunting. It's not making a travesty of the game. It's not affecting our ability to manage the game.
Now, he made more sense than at any time. And again, we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of how this started. It did. It became a penalty. If it doesn't
it's Texas
go right
Tech's fault, actually.
Yeah, it is. If it doesn't go into somebody's face or grill with it, it's not a penalty.
Yeah.
And that's the way. It's very simple. That guy was very much in control. And at times the Big 12 officials were afraid of their own shadow. And too much is put on Texas here. It was... most Texas fans don't give a damn.
No, it was Mac Brown and DeLoss Dodds and their administration.
Only after Texas Tech is the one that opened the wound.
Yeah, but they could have let it go.
Who?
So we're not going down the rabbit hole, or we are going down the rabbit hole?
But I want to make sure, no, because you'll get skewered. Because
I don't give up if I get skewered.
Okay,
but I already did that. But no, okay. Texas Tech did it. It was not a fair call, right, in that individual game. And then outside of that, it grew into something else where it became a penalty, and they're running down the hall to tell Jesse Palmer not to do it on the air. That was an administration thing at Texas. It wasn't a fan thing. I'm not blaming the fans. That's the administration that put the pedal to the floor on it.
I'm going to say this. Too many times we blame too much on Texas. And I know it's an easy target. But, yeah, could they have, said we don't give a damn? Sure. They did. They could have done that. But here's the thing. It's not the Big 12's problem anymore.
No, it's not.
And the SEC has a guy that seemed like he's level-headed and gets it. And thank God he gets it. He gave the examples. It makes sense. Move on. Right?
Yeah, no, and again, I just was trying to give this is how it happened. Somebody, I don't know who it was. I think DeLoss Dodds did have a lot to do with it, but somebody there made it an issue with the Big 12. After that game, made it an issue with the Big 12 and kept hitting the button, and the Big 12 kept responding the way it did. Now, could the Big 12 have said shut up? Yes, but they didn't. like the SEC clearly has. So really it's more the Big 12's fault than anything else. But, somebody in Texas clearly had a problem with it. Otherwise it wouldn't be, have gone on past that one game. That's my opinion on it. It should have been done after that one game of, we missed that call. Should have been called either way. Oops, daisy. We'll make sure we do that next time. And then it became specifically about horns down. That's where the Big 12 mismanaged it.
And again, one of the things is a lot of people really never cared much about it. It became more than it should have been. Yeah. All right, when we come back, Craig Smoke at Off the Radar. Pioneer Steel and Pipe. I know one of the viewers, they love it when I go to this particular endorsement. Pioneer Steel and Pipe since 1943, located on Highway 6 and Loop 340, just east of I-35 in Waco. Opened their doors in 1943, and a couple of years ago, opened up their doors to a brand new facility that is a complex that's just gorgeous. Bigger, better, faster, and stronger, but still with the core of what they've always wanted. One, great customer service, great product, and also making sure that whatever you need, they're going to do whatever possible to make sure you get it. And then you come back. And then a generation changes, and they come back. And that product, with all of the big stores that have popped up since 1943 that have more product and can then ask for a little less money for what that product is. Well, now, Pioneer Steel and Pipe has a bunch of product, and they continue to give you the best when it comes to what you can afford, what the cost is for pipe, steel, and metal. If you're building something, they have what you need. Pioneer Steel and Pipe, Pioneer Boys since 1943.
Bambi SQ, what is the number one reason or two or three reasons, Bambi, that people should contact House of Travel?
As a travel agency local here in Waco, we can take care of all your bookings, your payments, answer your questions, help you when there are issues or problems, things that may come up that you don't know what to do or how to fix them. People don't realize we don't charge a fee for what we do. It doesn't cost you extra to use a travel agent. We're just here. We get paid by the tour companies and the cruise lines to represent them. But you have an expert on your side that's here and local, and you have a name and a face to put together to help you with anything that you may need. Give us a call. We can price things for you. We can help you answer questions. We can make it simple, easy, and one stop.
Your knowledge of all the years you've done this and then spit it back to them or give them options?
Helps us to kind of know a date range, a budget, what your goals are and what you want to see and do on your vacation. And then that helps us to know what to look for, and we can narrow down and help you make the best choices for your vacation so you get the best value. You get exactly what you were hoping for, and making sure that it's taken care of with a carefree, easy, simple for you type vacation. I've been doing this for over 40 years. Every day I learn something new. I experience new situations and things that I can help take care of for people, whether it's just making sure you get the best deals and find the best vacations, or whether it's to solve that problem, like you've got a flight that's being canceled and you don't know what to do. There's weather coming up. Should I cancel my trip next week because of the hurricane? Those are things that we take care of and you don't have to worry about. You've got somebody that you can rely on that you know is an expert, knows what we're doing, have been doing this for a long time, so that you're not questioning, okay, does the person on the other end of the phone really understand what I'm asking or know how to find those deals? You've got an expert, and we are here to take care of that.
For more information, go to houseoftravelwaco.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and Equal Housing Lender.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers, here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
This is Craig Smoke's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports. It is 4:50 Central Time. We do this around 4:45 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, although kind of feeling like we're hitting that part of the summer where we desperately need football season to get here to fill out this segment on Tuesdays and Thursdays because it's a little bit dry today. It's a little bit dry.
Don't you have a drunk singer?
I have the drunk singer to talk about. Thanks for killing that lead there because I was gonna get to that detail on Ingrid Andress, who we all now know the name of after last night. But beyond All-Star festivities, I'm saying it's a little lackluster. So let's get into the All-Star game. And I guess we should start off with the drunk singer, as you referred to Ingrid Andress, Grammy-nominated singer. And I don't even know where. Like last night, I saw this clip because I knew the home run derby was about to start, and I was going to check it out. Especially got Adolis Garcia of the Rangers, who I'm a fan of. He's taking part. Home crowd, huge pop for Adolis, by the way, huge ovation for Adolis when he got introduced. But I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I start to see Twitter go crazy, as it does with any live sporting event that it's following. And I'm seeing this about the anthem and the anthem and the anthem. I wasn't watching live when the anthem was ongoing.
Well, I was.
But I went and I looked very quickly because it did not take long for it to be posted. And what I did here, sometimes Twitter can overplay their hand or blow things out of proportion. They did not in this instance. This was, I think, the worst national anthem rendition I have ever heard. Roseanne Barr was at least like half joking when she was doing her rendition of the national anthem. I know Fergie's a famous one that people mention.
Carl Lewis.
Carl Lewis was terrible. This was otherworldly bad by especially a Grammy-nominated singer in Ingrid Andress. And so what the heck was going on, right? I guess I'll get to what was going on because she's now responded and you've let a little bit of it be known. But what did you think when you first saw it?
I thought she was passing kidney stone.
Okay.
Like,
I
honestly,
mean, that's legitimate.
Something
was going on.
So we turned it on last night as we sat down to eat dinner, and Amanda's like, you got to hit mute. Like, this is bad. And so I went back and listened to the whole thing later, just because I had to.
Because you're a masochist?
I had to.
It was painful. I mean, it legitimately was hard to listen to.
I mean,
screeching.
Okay.
It's like a velociraptor or something.
Yeah. Craig, your sister and Daniel were at the...
Yeah, my brother-in-law and my sister actually went to the home run derby, which is very cool. They do stuff like kind of, I don't know if that was a last-minute thing or what.
Probably with them.
Yeah, but
she
I
said
thought that was
the
cool.
national anthem was beyond horrific. That was Jennifer and Daniel, worst I have ever heard.
Worst most anybody's ever heard. So it was bad. If you haven't heard it, like, it really is hard to listen to, but it's worth to say that you got through it. And so I got through it on Twitter right after it happened. And then I went searching for, is she just really not a good singer in real life? Like, I don't know, auto-tune and all of that. And I saw plenty of people who said, well, it sounds like the auto-tune was in effect, but, you had your musical engineers trying to break down and solve the case. You had people like, well, her earpiece sounds like it might have been malfunctioning. All these different reasons given for why it was the Rangers' fault Or, the people up in the booth's fault they didn't have the audio correctly. Well, we now know the reason as to why that performance was as awful and all-time bad as it was. Well, because country music artist Ingrid Andress, as she wrote on social media today, well, she said that she was drunk and that she is checking into rehab as a result. That's how bad that national anthem was. That was her rock bottom, undoubtedly, and not making light of it. I hope that was her rock bottom and that she gets better from this. I don't know how you could possibly be more embarrassed than she was last night, and you almost would think she'd lean into my earpiece was malfunctioning, but nope, she flat out said on Instagram, I'm not going to bullshit y'all. I was drunk last night. I'm checking myself into a facility today to get the help I need. That was not me last night. I apologize to MLB, all the fans, and this country I love so much for that rendition. I'll let y'all know how rehab is. I hear it's super fun. So there was Ingrid Andress on her national anthem last night that went awry.
I did not watch it live. It's not really something that even with the Dolichs being involved, but I noticed the Twitter timeline started to blow up in a name that I'd never heard before, and it was like, oh, my God, national anthem. So then I went and listened to it 15 seconds. That was enough.
Yeah, no, it was bad. They tweaked the rules again.
Well, let me get into the actual home run derby itself. So, that was the big headliner from last night was the song, actually, was the singing of Ingrid Andress and how all that played out. But there was an actual event she was singing beforehand for, and that was the annual home run derby. And Teoscar Hernandez of the Los Angeles Dodgers narrowly defeated Bobby Witt Jr. of the Kansas City Royals in the final round of the home run derby to earn a $1 million bonus and to also become the first LA Dodger to ever win the home run derby. I don't know how many people would know that kind of trivia, but just for what it's worth, first Dodger to win the derby, seventh Dominican-born player to win the derby for folks who care about those types of notes or statistics as well. And so Teoscar Hernandez, your home run derby champ. Bobby Witt Jr. is a freaking stud.
Yeah,
Kansas City, as a sports city, has two of the biggest, brightest young stars in their respective sports. I mean, how could you have been blessed any more than having Patrick Mahomes for one? I mean, that alone. But then also have a guy like Bobby Witt Jr. coming up the ranks as quickly as he has and as good as he's expected to be. But was not like a really dramatic event overall. Wasn't necessarily the most entertaining. There was some drama at the end with Bobby Witt and whether his last ball was going to, I guess, would have forced.
He swung at a bad pitch to get his third out, and then he had the bonus one because he had a 425-foot home run, and then
hits it to the deepest part of the park.
It got close, but it wasn't there.
So did not get even more drama. But Teoscar Hernandez, so there you go. He's the champion of the home run derby.
I didn't watch it, but I saw a guy this morning at the gym said that Witt's last, I guess you could say, swing was 5 feet from being over the wall.
It was
good.
Right? It scraped the wall.
Okay.
It scraped it. It was right there
to the deepest part of the park, like we were just saying a second ago.
Yeah, it was that part was good. It's long.
Mm-hmm.
It's just long, and it's been more fun for me in the past because I've been with my friends and we were drinking beer during it. And so they tweak the format again to try to speed it up. Not effective. It takes it seems like everybody going 2 minutes with a 30-second timeout wouldn't take 3 hours, but it still does.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just one of those things. I still liked it and enjoyed it, but
why is it that all-star activities now seem like they're absolutely horrible compared to when they first, for 30 years, they were fine. The slam dunk contest,
part of it is
derby.
I think that's nostalgia on our part. We think it was better when Jordan was in the slam dunk. I think.
Well, and part of it is also that, not all the big stars, Ohtani's not in this.
Right. There's not a big stars like there were back in the 90s when, and the home run derby didn't always have, it wasn't like Bonds, McGuire, Sosa were lining up every year. But I do think there's some element of it's not always the best, biggest, brightest stars. It drags on too long. The formats change a lot, or at least it feels that way. So, and also nostalgia. I think you're remembering it more fondly because it seemed better maybe when you were younger.
Have they tried to make it so much of an entertainment thing rather than just the event? Has that made any difference?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I think that. I do, and this is maybe nostalgia, and I'm not totally nuts about him. I miss Chris Berman calling it, and I love Carl Ravitch. I think Carl Ravitch is great at his job. I just think that there's an element there that Carl Ravitch, he's not that kind of broadcaster. It's not the home run derby's not his wheelhouse.
Maybe get Gus Johnson on the home run derby or something.
Look, I want Hank Azaria doing Jim Brockmeyer doing it. I think that would be great. But I think that it's just kind of all those things together. They had Griffey on. He's won 3 times, so he was in it.
I got to tell y'all, man, this was, I've had a few of these here lately. That's one of I feel like I'm getting old moments with seeing old Griffey on TV and seeing how he's aging. And now I feel the pain of so many others of like seeing the guys you grew up with and seeing them get older. And I'm seeing like Salt and Pepper Griffey, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting so old now.
Big Poppy's kid just got drafted by the Red Sox in the 19th round.
I wonder how much also the home run derby, because of the steroid era, became the freak show, and all of those guys participated.
I don't remember them all participating. I mean, they did, but I don't. But I think it's like the slam dunk like when people reminisce about the slam dunk, they're like, it was Jordan and it was Jordan and Dominique, and it was like a year here and there, but there was also Harold Miner in the middle of the 90s, and he was a hot thing for a hot minute, but that flamed out really quickly.
I think, though, when it did win awry was like when guys like Brent Barry would win, and it was cool, but like Brent Barry was the 8th best player on his team.
Yeah, you don't think he's really the best slam dunk guy in the entire league, really. He was just the best one available that night,
Vince Carter buoyed it for a second because he would do it, and his first one was unreal.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think those things, they're better when the biggest stars are in them, and then if one of the guys who is a rookie or a player who's kind of just having a great year comes in there and beats them, that's where it gets interesting, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's just age. I think it's all sorts of different factors. Maybe it goes on too long, too much of a format change year to year, or whatever you want to peg to. I have not seen ratings for the event, nor do I care all that much, but I was a little bit curious of what that pulled in. So glad my sister and brother-in-law got to go see that. Haven't talked to them, but will this weekend, and I'm sure it was a fun time. Seems like a fun event to go to, like something you may not have like on the top of your bucket list, but something that if you got the chance to go to, it seems like it'd be pretty cool to say that you went to the home run derby at the All-Star game. So Teoscar Hernandez was the champion. The national anthem was awful. Good luck to Ingrid Andress for real on trying to get her life in order and whatever she was dealing with that led to that rock bottom moment last night. But beyond that, the All-Star game itself is actually going to be played later on this evening. You know the format, AL versus NL, and if you're looking for some reasons to watch, how about the fact that Paul Skeens will be starting on the mound for the National League?
That's awesome.
The Pirates rookie, former LSU national champion, boyfriend of Livy Dunn, has to be in his bio as well, I think, for most people. Corbin Burns, excellent pitcher in his own right for the Baltimore Orioles, will be going for the American League. And, they'll get their one inning or maybe 2 innings, or if even that, but they'll get their 1 inning to start the game off. So Skeens versus Burns is how it will all get underway. That is coming to you from Globe Life Field in Arlington, home of the Rangers, the World Series champions, 7 o'clock Central Time on Fox. So that's something to check out later on this evening. Beyond that, like I said, a bit slow. Just, I guess, a couple of very minor things to mention. Wide receiver Brandon Ayuk of the San Francisco 49ers, a lot of smoke around him and perhaps where, he would like to continue playing and it not being with the San Francisco 49ers, but a lot of, talk about his contract and his future. They've been having negotiations, trying to get to an extension that would, be quite lucrative and would make him happy to stay there in San Francisco. But that has, I guess, hit a brick wall, as it seems to have kind of done a couple of times now. But this time, Brandon Ayuk, according to Adam Schefter, being told that, he wants a trade. He's officially requesting a trade. And so teams have reached out, but the 49ers have been told that, no team has I guess the 49ers are not of the belief that this is going to be something that they go through with. They're not going to look to trade Brandon Ayuk. Of course not. That would be stupid on their part, but he's got to do the whole public angst, routine to try and get his way ultimately. It did pique my interest that for about a 30-second I guess, stint there a couple weeks ago. The Commanders were mentioned with him.
Yeah.
I don't even know how realistic that was. Obviously not very.
It was because there was a Zoom interview between he and Jaden Daniels or something.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're friends from their Arizona State days.
But we didn't really go beyond that other than, like, that would be cool if that happened. So Brandon Ayuk officially requesting a trade.
Yeah, he's not getting traded. They're a Super Bowl favorite in the NFC for a reason. He's a big part of that.
He's a free agent next offseason.
He's a free agent next offseason. Now, there is some thought of, like, well, you should trade him before you don't get anything for him. Well, here's their calculus on that. Like, draft picks that might help us in the future or a guy who's going to help us win the Super Bowl. We'll take the guy who helps us win the Super Bowl. He's making $14 million this year. He may hold out for a little while, but let's face it, it's not going to be that long. And you know, he can demand a trade all he wants. He's going to be a 49er until they're out of the playoffs this year. And then they'll figure out what to do about that next offseason, whether it's franchise and trade him and get a massive haul or just let him walk and move on. But he won't be a 49er in 2025, I don't think. But I do think that he will be a 49er for the rest of this season.
Yeah. You guys, is that it, Craig? I'm sorry.
Other than that, Caleb Williams, Roma Dunze agreed to their rookie deals, but those things are slotted, so you kind of get the gist on what the money is. It's not like there's anything super like baseball free agent, shocking types of numbers that would catch you off guard. But they made that official, so that's just something exciting for Rams fans. And for the most part, I think that's about it. We can leave it there as far as a few things off the radar.
All right, some of the chat comments about feeling nostalgic. Stormy Cyclone. Craig, you think you're feeling old? Look to your left. David Smoke remembers Nebraska's dominance.
Oh, damn.
Kim Coulter brought up the fact the All-Star game is tonight at Arlington. And, of course, this is the third stadium they've played in. But the original Arlington Stadium, somebody asked about Kim, sitting in the bleachers in left field at Arlington Stadium once when I was in college is like sitting, and it was like you were sitting in a bowl with foil. Yeah. Because it was there was nothing to hide the sun.
And it was cement and aluminum bleachers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
When I was for my first game there, I was 9 years old. And I remember the back of my legs being a little burnt.
No, mine weren't a little bit burnt.
Yeah, I mean, like
like up here,
But like from sitting on the seat, not from the sun, just from sitting on the seat.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
One of my favorite T-shirts is actually I've worn it, I think, a few times probably on this show, but it's an Arlington Stadium. It was a Rangers giveaway from a couple years ago. It's like a red shirt, but it's got the white outline of the old Arlington Stadium. I guess it was like a commemoration thing. Super comfortable, cool-looking shirt. I was there. I went there a few times. I was too young to really take away too much. Ballpark in Arlington, I loved that place.
I did too.
But it got hot, like the other one. It just had more of the accoutrements and things that made you not dwell on that as much. But you get out there in August and the Rangers aren't that good, and it doesn't matter how nice that ballpark is. It was still too damn hot. So this weekend, the plan is somebody's going to go to the new stadium for the first time ever.
That would be me.
That would be Smokey. I've been once, and that was last year. And so the plan is to go up on either Friday night or Saturday, and we're going to see the Rangers.
I think based on the conversation with Daniel, it looks like it's going to be Friday night. That's what I was telling Paul. We're going to the game.
So
we'll be out of pocket Friday and have a chance to go look at the first time.
Wait until we're talking about the old Arlington Stadium and the hot bleachers and all that, and then even the ballpark in Arlington, which was beautiful. Like, it was a beautiful stadium.
I missed that stadium.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It's just too dang hot though. But you'll understand once you walk in there of like, oh, I see why they did this.
Would you like to know the only time I've big timed someone ever? And we had a bus trip, and it was on a Saturday in August, and we were sitting out there in left field. In the ballpark, and I was making sure everybody got in. So the 2 rows of seats that we had 3 rows of seats essentially for this bus, and the 2 rows of seats that were under the awning were taken up by the time I got done making sure everybody got there. There were a lot of kids on this trip.
Right.
It was very full. They were playing the Astros, and so I get there, and I would have been sitting in the sun, and so I sat there for 2 innings. And then I had, knowing it was going to be hot, called John Blake early in the week and said, hey, can I come up? We're going to be there. He's like, yeah, sure. I watched innings 2 to 8 in the press box.
In the press box.
I sat next to Randy Galloway, and it was great.
Yeah.
No, don't have to worry about that at the new place.
I thought the ballpark in Arlington was almost a perfect stadium, but yeah, the one now they have, and there was debate about whether you wanted one that had a retractable roof. Houston has theirs, and others do too.
You know, I've brought that up with Jared Sandler, and I asked David Murphy about this. Of like, how much do you think that played into them winning the World Series? Was having the indoor, and they're like, well, actually, they went and won the road games, but their road games were in domes as well.
Mm-hmm.
They were all indoors. So
Tampa.
Yeah, and Baltimore was not. That was the first round, though. And
obviously Houston.
And Houston was indoors. So I thought about that, and I was like, yeah, David Murphy, you're right. Wait a second. All of them were indoors, though, except for the first series. So, yeah, I think it did help them in the long run.
Is Arizona's
it's indoors.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
they played nearly the entire postseason indoors, with the exception of that short, I guess, what was it, about 2 games in Baltimore is what it would have been.
Yeah.
But beyond that, all of it was indoors. So my point stands that I think that was, other than their incredible roster, I think that having that little bit of extra energy at the end of the year instead of playing in this garbage day after day gave them what they needed to get over the finish line.
They won in their the Dodgers won there when they had the COVID year. LFG sat in direct sun, 1984 at Arlington Stadium in a Rangers game, right field. The heat refracted off the silver bleachers and concrete. We've all been there.
Yeah,
we've all been there.
I want to know why you just went right past the Nebraska comment earlier.
I mean, it stung. It stung. It's not only a comment about Nebraska not being relevant
but also
anymore,
getting older.
It's also a comment about his age.
I'm not so sure what happens first. Jerry and the Cowboys win a Super Bowl before he dies, or Nebraska wins a national championship before I do.
I think Nebraska. Nebraska's in better hands.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, when you're about the same age Butch was when I first started working with him, and I used to make old jokes about him, but I'm middle-aged now, so I feel like that's
you're
completely appropriate.
You went above the threshold of 40.
Yeah.
But I mean,
both of you did.
Yeah.
But I mean, truly, though, like Nebraska, you'd think that would be a safe bet that you would take, and that would seem like, oh, yeah, that nowadays, I don't know, man. I don't know that there's another one out there for them. I mean,
here's the difference. Here, let's be honest. In the last 10 years, the Cowboys have at least put themselves in position, if they could either get a break or make a break or play better on a certain game, to be a part of that discussion, where Nebraska has had none of that.
Right. And in the NFL, it's not subjective to even get into the field. Like, you win and you advance and you just win, and that's how it's taken care of. We're getting there in college football, sort of, but yeah, I think the Cowboys might be the safer bet, honestly, and I would have said that for a very long time.
I would think they are.
Yeah.
And Matt Rule trying to see what he can do in year 2. I'm not going to believe anything till I see it, because I've been teased for too long, and really haven't had high expectations, and won't for this year until I find out how they do when they host Colorado in week 2. All right, when we come back, the 5 o'clock hour, a couple of more notes. The EA Sports College Football 25 game was played last night by a lot of different people. A note from Sharp Football, and this came at late last night, of how many people were online playing that game, and it's not even officially out. We'll have that and more. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for all of your automotive needs. If you're looking to get into a new vehicle, they can handle that for you. If you're looking to get into a pre-owned vehicle, they can handle that for you. If you're looking to get some just body work done, maybe you had an accident, fender bender type of thing, and you need to get that taken care of, they can help you out with that. You just need your regular upkeep, they can help you with that. They are your one-stop shop. They are the people that you can count on, and right now they're celebrating American quality and American value during their red, white, and blue sale here during the month of July at Richard Carr Buick GMC Cadillac. They've got professional-grade power mixed with first-class luxury interior and a multi-pro tailgate. That combination is the GMC Sierra, the best truck on the road, and Richard Carr is loaded with trucks to get you out on the roadways today. Right now, save $9,000 on all 2024 GMC Sierra SLT models in stock with a 2010 or new trade-in, with the 22 or 2010 or new trade-in. But you can find Sierra trucks in general on the lot under $40,000 and get more information on their savings, their trade-ins, and all that's available to you when it comes to the GMC Sierra SLT trucks right now over at Richard Carr. The red, white, and blue tags on all the cars on the lot will help fill you in. And, of course, you can always talk to the good pros over there and visit their website as well. They've also got a lot full of not just those Sierras, but 100 highly inspected used cars and trucks to choose from. All special price during the red, white, and blue tag sale. And with a dozen lenders to choose from, their goals haven't changed. They get credit approved when others don't. 100% credit approval is always their goal. For 25 years in Central Texas, Richard Carr has built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Buying a new car, buying a pre-owned car, trading it in, getting your car worked on, getting your car taken care of. Log on to richardcarr.com today or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Thank you for calling your local Marco's Pizza. We're turning up the heat with our new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Fresh, house-made dough is topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers. At only $5.99, this limited-time product is a hot deal. Add it to your order while you can. A Marco's team member will be with you shortly.
Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it, and that offer on the Reaper Cheesy Bread is available right now at any of the 5 Marco's Pizza locations in Waco, including Belmead, China Spring, Robinson, Woodway, and Hewitt. Order online at marcos.com. Call for a pickup or delivery. Marco's Pizza is turning up the heat with their all-new Reaper Cheesy Bread with fresh, hot, house-made dough topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers, and only $5.99 and for a limited time only. Marco's Pizza, the fastest-growing pizza brand in America, 5 locations in Waco, and the new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
All right, a couple of more notes today in college football. I saw this, and I don't know, I'm sure this has been updated quite a bit, but Sharp Football, which is a really good follow if you don't, this was, as of late yesterday evening, there were 662,000 plus people online playing EA Sports College Football 25 hours after its launch. And I don't know what the number was as of late last night, like at midnight or so, because I actually went to bed an hour earlier than I normally do. But just that number, and it's the pre-part of it. It's not even the official part of it.
It's 660.
The official release is later this week, right?
Yeah, but this is the whole game.
Yeah, no, I know that, but I mean, who doesn't get it? The preview. 662,000 people online playing that game.
What does the 103 say? What is underneath that?
It's a
It
great
says
question.
player searching.
Yeah, I think they're trying to
Find
maybe
matchups,
figure
I
out what
guess.
they're doing. But I'm gonna go back to Sharp and see what the I'm gonna go to EA Sports and see what the update is. But Emery, how long were you on it? Hour and a half.
Yeah, I didn't grow up playing online, so that's not something that I do or ever really did. And I just, play to myself or with friends, but I have buddies who are big online players, and I'm sure that some of them were amongst that number last night. I would be shocked if they weren't, because I know how much they love college football and that game, and we're excited for this new release. So, yeah, that's, I guess, I don't know what to compare that to. I don't know what expectations were, but I think with all of the buildup that we've seen, all of the PR and the crossover marketing and everything else, I mean, they spend a lot on advertising. They also got a boatload of free advertising just from word of mouth and shows like this and, Matt Brown interviews and things like that. So it seems like it went about as well as it possibly could as far as the excitement level and being able to actually live up to that.
Yeah, and really that was what Matt Brown said. He thought it would be much higher a number than most people realize. But I don't know what the number, like you said, I don't know what was the goal or what was the prediction or whatever, but 662,000 online at one particular time. I'm looking for an update from him, but I don't see one. All right, also this. I thought this was funny, cute. Utah and BYU, we know about their unbelievable rivalry last night. So this is from Mark Harlan. He basically reaches out to BYU AD, Tom Homo. Hey, I'm getting flooded with football officiating complaints. Are we playing each other right now? And then Homo responded, I can't talk right now. I'm locked in, showing him playing the game. And then Harlan goes, I get it now. Turnover forthcoming.
That was nice. Good stuff there.
I love the fact that they could have fun with it, and they absolutely did.
I like Tom Homo, 60-something years old, rocking out to the video game.
No,
appreciate that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Appreciate that.
Wonder if that was bought through the BYU budget.
Yeah, well, I bet you they get free stuff.
I think he probably gets paid well enough to afford a PS5 as well. But either way, yeah, I mean, who knows if that's his rig or not, but he had it handy enough to be able to have fun with that and to partake in all of the back and forth surrounding this game, and also, poke back and forth with his rival, which I think more so than the video game part of this, I think it's just cool to see them interacting and knowing, hey, those teams are going to play each other and it's going to be meaningful conference action, and it's going to be a great rivalry renewed in the Big 12 that probably floats a little bit under the radar. They don't have a ton of the bigger rivalries, but they do have some pretty heated ones. Baylor, TCU, I know if you're not really a part of it, you don't understand, but there's a real deal hatred there that goes back a long time. And BYU, Utah, same thing there. Arizona State. I mean, there's others that are going to have to kind of become, their own original type of rivalries that spawn from a close game or two coaches who don't like each other or whatever. But I do think adding BYU and Utah into the mix, and also Arizona State, does give them a little bit to replace some of what they lost. Not close to replacing it all by any means. You don't replace OU, Texas, but I do think BYU, Utah is a very nice pickup.
Chris Pesman's termination becomes official August the 1st. Any decisions that he makes, of course, will be at the discretion of the president.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he's probably not doing much other than pretty routine stuff right now, so.
Yeah, and I don't know if he'll end up somewhere else. He did put out a classy message like the very next day about how much he was proud to be a part of the transition, et cetera, to get into the Big 12.
Well, Willie Fritz handled that like it was no big deal. I'm sure it's different behind the scenes, but he had that asked, I think, probably during every interview of, what are your thoughts on your AD leaving that just hired you? And he handled it really well. I think Houston's probably in for a rocky season just overall because there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of unknowns. You throw this on top of it, I don't know that it changes much, but I do think there's just a little bit too much in the air to expect them to be really good right out of the gates. But I do think Willie Fritz will have them good in a short amount of time, and apparently they're going to start formal interviews next week for that job. So I know we saw what's his face got brought up. Yeah, Oliver Luck,
Jeremiah Dickey,
JD and others that'll be a part of that, but I guess they're starting those interviews formally next week.
So Pete Nakos from On3 with the discussion about Georgia and fining the NIL collective fining players, he found this in their morals clause. Athlete hereby further covenants that athlete will not at any time during the term engage in any conduct or activity of any nature whatsoever that may shock, insult, or offend the general public, bring athlete and or collective into public disrepute, contempt, scandal, or ridicule, or otherwise adversely affect the athlete's collective reputation, public image, or goodwill. And 3, or C, result in athlete being charged with a crime by any governmental entity, regardless of whether such charges result in a conviction.
Yeah,
I think that's just, you would think that would naturally be involved.
Yeah, I mean, earlier we were talking about this, and when you brought up the collective part of it, you almost seemed kind of surprised, and like, I'm not. They sign contracts. I mean, that's part of, signing a contract is having stuff like that, language like that in there, depending on the type of agreement we're talking about. So, yeah, I think Georgia's NIL collective would have done themselves a disservice to not have something in there if a guy does something that is a really bad look that you're paying money to, for himself, for the program, for Georgia as an institution. I think that's just smart business, is to have some type of language in there that, yeah, you can be penalized if you're out drunk driving or, giving a black eye to the program at large. So, I think that's probably common.
My part of it was not being surprised. I forgot that
they sign contracts like that nowadays?
No. I just forgot they could be fined because it's just still, for me, kind of like grasping that they're getting paid.
And that they sign contracts like that nowadays.
So I'm not surprised they were fined, but I just forget that it's tied in like that.
You forget that they could actually be punished in some form or fashion.
Well, because really, let's be honest, since around 2020, the COVID, the extra year, NIL, transfer portal, now revenue sharing or whatever is going to end up with that,
video game cut.
They haven't had anything where there's consequences other than a coach can kick you off the team.
Yeah, I mean,
everything's been, hey, you get this, now you earn this, you earn this. Now you also need to be treated like an adult.
Everything's come up roses. Yes, that's a great way to put it. Like but
it's come up roses because for about 100 years they were wrestling through thorns with no even Band-Aids given to them for the most part. So, this is all just a pendulum swinging the other way, but there is now finally a middle ground being settled into where it's been swooping one way or the other. It was hanging up to the left for a really long time, all in favors of the schools. It's swung wildly starting with COVID back towards the players, and it's very firmly still in their court and in their territory. But I do think for both sides, having contracts that lay things like that out are just common sense and good business.
One more thing, and then I know we have John McClain. Dabo Swinney, haven't heard from him much. He's been kind of under the radar. They open up with Georgia. What a great game that would be.
Hell yeah.
Saying that he anticipates a shift with the expanded playoff could lead to frequent in-season opt-outs from players or teams sitting their stars if a playoff berth is already locked up.
It's in the NFL.
Or you're 4-4 and you're out of the playoffs. You might see players leaving even earlier than they would before a bowl game.
Yeah, they've got to get all that stuff worked out. But I do think that, for bowl games, make them NIL games and the people won't leave as much.
Yeah.
Pay them for going and you won't have that problem.
Good point. I think go ahead.
I don't think you can have everything the way that you want it anymore either. Like, that's the other thing that I think we have to come to grips with is that it's just not the way that it was, and this idyllic, scenario in our heads where everybody is just happy to be there and happy to play every game for the university and for the student body and alums and everything. Like, that's just not the case anymore. I think there are some guys that are definitely still like that, but that's part of the risk, but that risk is now part of the game, and I don't think there's anything you can do to put that back in the bottle. You can't close up the portal. You can't prevent all of that. But I also think that we see stuff like that and we react as though like 1,000 guys are going to do that when in reality it's like maybe 2, and one of them is making a really dumb decision that probably comes back to haunt him by doing that, So let's get there and see what it really is like, but I don't need to be scared and worried about it right now necessarily. I understand why he does, though.
Here's an example. Maybe you're 11-0 and have a rivalry game, but you have your biggest foe the next week at a conference championship game. And if you win that game, you're going to get a bye. Those are the things you'll see play out through college football. I think if it's a rivalry game, I would be stunned.
That scenario's not good for his argument.
Yeah,
It's like, who's not playing in that game? Undefeated conference rival.
Like, I'll remember after the Jason, who was Smith? Is that the linebacker from Notre Dame? Jalen Smith, who had his leg just all blown up. Okay. I remember then, like the next year, when players started opting out of bowl games, and for me, because of my age or because of I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me.
Okay.
And that's now a thing.
If I'll just use him, and I doubt he would do this, but let's just say Donovan Edwards opts out of the Michigan-Ohio State game because they're already in the playoff, and Michigan loses to Ohio State for the first time in 3 years because they can't run the ball.
Oh, his whole legacy changes.
Yeah. Again, he's like, I know he's opting out and his time on campus will be shorter. It's only a couple more months, but, all that cool stuff that's happened to you is kind of...
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think anybody's sat out of a playoff game yet.
No. Well, nobody's have set up a playoff.
So, again, I don't think he's given I know where he's coming from, but I don't think this is the best example.
I almost said this, but it would have just been a kick in your nuts.
Florida State
wasn't in the playoff.
I almost said Florida State.
They weren't in the playoff last.
Oh
Wait,
my God!
what happened?
In the playoff.
Oh, how did they not be in the playoff?
Yeah, they opted out. They quit that thing.
I know his scenario is not talking about the playoff specific because he mentions like a rivalry game, the end of the year, and all that. But I think, we got to give players a little bit of credit, man.
Yeah.
Like, they're self-aware. They're not going to sit out the Ohio State game because, especially if they're going to come play after that. You're not just going to skip that week to preserve yourself. So I don't think that's as much of a concern. But he's on the right track as far as wondering kind of how this morphs with more games and just more toll on bodies and, more personal goals versus team goals being, important to certain guys.
Yeah. But before we go to John, we have to get to this today.
Sam, hold on. One more EA Sports note.
Okay.
Sam Hartman on his Twitter feed late this morning, just blowing off some steam. Wake Forest 105, Clemson 34.
It's definitely a video game.
Yeah, it's definitely
with 5 minutes to go in the game. Yeah.
All right. So, Smokey? What's your biggest pet peeve when things are in Texas and they show Cowboys games?
Oh my God!
They show Fort Worth.
The
stockyards.
They make it look like that. Gunsmoke is still a thing.
Okay. So here's what SEC Media Days has done.
Of course they did.
And here is Brian Kelly.
Of all the people.
Of doing all of it. And honestly, he's got divorced dads trying to make his teenage kids like him when they're there for the weekend vibes. That's his whole thing.
Well, there was the fake accent. There was him he was dancing with chains on. And and see,
he's a chameleon.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, though. The Longhorn cattle in the state of Texas, they're everywhere. But at the same time, it's not Texas. It's very modernized. This is not 1955.
I can just tell me that you cannot see this guy going to his 16-year-old daughter like, "Hey, sweetie, I got your tickets to Disney on Ice." Dad, I'm 16.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's having fun. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
I don't know how genuine it all is, but he's definitely having fun. And I do hate that every event in Texas they act like we're in the Wild West still, and it's like Houston's, Dallas's. San Antonio's got their parts of town that are still like that, but it's definitely not the broad stroke of the city in any way. But that's the lazy thing they fall into with anything in Texas. Doesn't matter if it's Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin. Austin may be a little bit different in that regard because they kind of have their own reputation for sort of being
and the Longhorns.
Adopted child in a way, yeah. But they do have the Longhorns. You're right, and they've got the Silver Spurs, and they've got all that. So yeah. It's just the kind of the Texas stereotype.
It is like the opening video of almost any major event. I don't know about tonight at the All-Star game, what they'll show when they come in.
It'll be Sam Elliott voiceover.
Yeah. It's not Tombstone. It's not a great movie. It's not even Yellowstone, which I know is in Montana but was shot in Texas. But it seemed like they always show some sort of scenery with a ranch and cattle. Okay. Hall of Fame columnist John McClain is next. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Right now they have the new fiery flavors, large pizzas starting At $8.99, you could use the code FIERY, F-I-E-R-Y, and also you could order now online. You could pick it up or they will deliver. Also, Pozzoli, they have those available, kind of like pizza wraps, only $5.99 a piece, traditional or boneless wings, plain buffalo, garlic, parmesan, and barbecue. Order now, but don't wait too long because you also can get more if you want, including specialty pizzas. I have ordered Marco's Pizza for the studio many times. I've ordered when I'm at the condo and I want a pizza a lot of times. And I know Bob Mock, the owner of 5 locations in Waco, including Hewitt, Woodway, Robinson, China Spring, and Belmead. Marco's Pizza, the fastest growing pizza brand in America. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Townwest Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco is where I get my cigars. 48-foot walk-in humidor with all of the great brands, nationally and internationally, the best elite brands around the world. And how about this email from owner Josh Caldwell, who told me about a couple that drove in from Fort Worth to Waco purely based on listening and hearing me talk about Don Humidor. They have a pipe that's a bit of a family heirloom that needed to be repaired. They made the special trip to Don's after listening to 365 Sports, finding out we are one of the only shops left that can help them with the pipe. Not only are they going to fix the pipe, and they did, they also bought a new setup, complete with pipe, stand, and some sample tobaccos. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Townwest Shopping Center, just between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco. 48-foot walk-in humidor, great cigars, even what you need when it comes to smoking pipes and repair, and fresh coffee beans. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans with Cheyenne and Josh in the Townwest Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
Make this the summer of Ram at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive home in a 2025 Ram 1500 Lone Star for just 2.9% for 72 months with no payments for 90 days. Plus, first responders get an extra $500 off at Allen Samuels.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist with us, NFL Hall of Fame, and also voter on 365 Sports. John, do camps open at all? Training camps open this week?
Yeah, the Texans and Bears who play in the Hall of Fame game, they both open. I think Texans open on Thursday, and Bears, I'm guessing, open at the same time. That's reason they finally did the contracts for quarterback Caleb Williams and wide receiver Rome Odunze, because everybody's reporting. Some teams have had rookies report early. I haven't had rookies come in since the Oilers. Back then, everybody would have a few days with the rookies. Some vets would come in if they wanted to, but then the vets would generally come in 4 or 5 days later. So everybody will be in full swing next week, but quite a few are this week.
John, is Brandon Ayuk going to get traded?
No. Why would they trade the guy? They're trying to get to a Super Bowl. That's something that they've not done. They're trying to win a Super Bowl. And so you don't get better by trading your best receiver. Now, I think it's very interesting since they made the trade for Christian McCaffrey, their percentage of run to pass is last in the league. They run the ball more. They're 32nd in the percentage of running compared to passing. So they like to run. They like almost a 50-50 split at a time when most teams are throwing it all over the place. So do they want a $30 million a year receiver, along with Deebo Samuels, along with George Kittle, along with Christian McCaffrey, a great receiver, and then Rick Pearsall, the rookie they drafted, I think, from Florida in the first round. So I think he'll be gone sometime before the draft. They could let him walk and get a third-round compensatory pick. I think they could get more than a third-round pick if they traded him. So he'll be unhappy, but he'll report because he doesn't want to lose millions and millions of dollars since he makes, quote-unquote, only $14 million. And so he'll want to come back. He might be disgruntled, but he'll want to play hard, play well, have success, and move into that $30 million a year range.
John, you mentioned the camp starting up and the Texans being one of those. What are you most looking forward to? I mean, I know this is nothing new for you, and we've talked during the offseason about some of your biggest questions, but what are you just looking forward to getting down to the bottom of or checking out when it comes to the Texans?
This will be my 48th training camp, and at this time I feel like I used to growing up in Waco, and I couldn't wait for the first day of school to see who was in my class, and I got all excited, couldn't sleep the night before, and I still feel that way today. And it's easier because Texans have such high expectations. I think people need to temper those expectations. It's not coming from the team. It's coming from fans, media, locally, nationally, because the schedule is so much more difficult, including all the quarterbacks they go up against. But, of course, you want to see Stroud throwing to Stephon Diggs. You want to see throwing to Tank Dell, who went down for the season with a fractured fibula. He's 100%. But what I'll be watching, and this won't be anything you can watch until they start playing, they don't have their defensive tackles from last year. And they didn't make any big moves like in the draft or in free agency to get a good one. They signed a couple of guys, they're journeymen, and considering Sheldon Rankins and Malik Collins, Rankins went to the Bengals as a free agent, and Collins was traded to the 49ers for a 7th-round pick. They know things we don't know, and I can't wait to see what it is. They got a lot of candidates, but that is the biggest question mark on this team, the interior defensive line. Now, they'll never admit this, but the fact is, on offense, they have one opening. That's left guard. Kenyon Green, number 1 pick 2 years ago, started as rookie, missed all last season. They need him to step up and play the way they expected him to when they drafted him in the first round out of Texas A&M. You know, that's going to change because of injuries, but right now they have one opening on offense, and I think they could have 5 openings on defense.
John McClain with us, 365 Sports. John, what is a storyline nationally? Is it the Chiefs trying to win again? Is it can they win? And what's the receiver's name that got himself in trouble?
Rashid Rice.
Rashid Rice. Well, they've done this before without star receivers or whatever. What do you think is the biggest story? And how long do you think Rice might miss? How many games will he be suspended?
Based on everything we've seen, evidence, he admitted his guilt. I'm going to guess they're going to suspend him 6. He will appeal it and probably get it knocked down to 4. But, you know, he's been a moron off the field on more than just racing and causing wrecks that could have killed people. You know, to me, they ought to suspend him at least half the season. But I don't know what he'll do. But there's so many players that get speeding tickets now. Somebody needs to put their foot down. That should be Roger Goodell. The storyline of trying to be the first to win 3 Super Bowls in the Super Bowl era is big, very big. And in this part of the country, and I get this everywhere I go. Every Tuesday I go to Gallery Furniture on I-45 and shoot a video with Mattress Mac. And his store has so many Cowboy fans working there. And as soon as I walk in, they ask me the same questions every week. And those questions too, will Dak resign? What are they going to do about running the ball? Can they win in the playoffs? I think Dak will resign. I think CeeDee Lamb will get the contract, and Micah Parsons get it next year. But to me, the biggest story in this part of the country, and one of the biggest nationally, can the Cowboys, with Dak Prescott at quarterback, actually win a couple of playoff games and make a run at the Super Bowl? I don't think they'll win the division because nobody repeats in the NFC East. So I think Philadelphia will win the division. They'll get in on a wild card. They'll both have double-digit wins. But, boy, when the Cowboys play their first playoff game, all eyes will be on Dak and Mike McCarthy.
John, as a lifelong Cowboys fan, I wonder if I'll ever feel joy again.
How old are you, Paul?
I'm 44.
Well, maybe you got a chance. You know,
wow.
Somewhere when you're in an old folks' home in Waco, and hopefully you're still here and you can see, maybe the Cowboys will get back to another Super Bowl. I'm 72, and I'm afraid next time they do that, I'll be on the other side of the grass hanging with Elvis.
John, you've got an event coming up here in Waco. Is it next week, right?
Next week, next Wednesday, not this Wednesday, next Wednesday. It's a Lone Star Luncheon. It's a fundraiser for the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. I'm honored to be sitting with Mean Joe Green for almost an hour talking about his career from growing up in Temple, playing when football was still segregated, going to North Texas, being drafted by the Steelers, beating the Cowboys in 2 Super Bowls, keeping the Oilers out of 2 Super Bowls, beating them in the AFC Championship game, the Coke commercial, the origin of his nickname. I am really fired up about doing it. If anybody's interested, go on the Texas Sports Hall of Fame website, get tickets.
All right. Can I scratch an itch and ask? You mentioned Mattress Mac. I saw a video of him at a press conference on all the crap that's gone on in Houston, and I saw a couple of tweets from you. Has it really just been a nightmare down there with the energy and electricity?
CenterPoint Energy, which makes like $70 billion a year. I felt sorry for all the linemen going out, getting abused by people, some guy threatening them and stuff. It's not them, it's CenterPoint, the planning, all the mistakes they made. I did a grading system, gave them an F-, call them pathetic with a capital P. But Mattress Mac, who does commercials constantly at his store, he went off on him. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick was there, and I mean, he tore them apart. And the problem is up at the top, where their planning was awful. The way they got to actually getting the linemen out was awful. I went 5 days. I know people, there's still about a couple 100,000 that still don't have it. And it was just pathetic the way they operated. And when Mattress Mac goes after you, you know you're in trouble.
Yeah. He is. He's got that voice that's very emphatic, distinct. You can tell if he's a lover, and he can also be a fighter. There's no doubt about that.
He opened up his store to anybody that needed it. He had 15,000 when I went out there to record last week, and I wrote a column out there because I don't have electricity, and they had kids running everywhere. I mean, it was like a gigantic daycare center, and he has a cafeteria in there. He fed everybody for free for multiple days. There's nobody likes goodwill more than Mattress Mac.
Yeah, it sounds that way. He seems to be a guy that just opens up the doors for him, literally.
He does. When he had his Hurricane Harvey, he did the same thing. People were sleeping in his chairs, on his mattresses, and his beds. And then afterward, you had everything RV sale and everything. People came out and bought everything.
All right, John, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Sick 'em Bears.
John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist with us from, of course, the great city of Houston.
Before we get to the top 5, I do want to tell everybody that tomorrow is the day you've all been waiting for. It is keg
You're
stand.
going to announce the child.
It is keg stand day.
Okay, where is this happening?
Wherever we set the keg up and the camera can point at it. Like right there.
Is there going to be like trash bags and things like that to cover up any splatter?
We'll be fine. Yes, we'll be prepared. We'll be prepared.
Cameras from different angles.
We're going to do what we can.
Do you know what you need to wear?
I mean,
a nice pink dress.
No, I mean, I'm just going to wear
a romper.
A romper? I'll get some coveralls. How about that?
You need to wear it because gravity's going to take over your clothing.
Yeah, I'm gonna tuck in my shirt.
Okay,
that's for
all
sure.
Right,
that's for sure. And look, I have an undershirt on. I just don't,
Okay.
I don't want all that. Yes.
So when are we going to do this? Since I'm going to set up tomorrow's guest list.
We're going to the top 5. You got to do 5 seconds.
No, we're going to do it. We're going to do it off the top of the show.
Oh, are we really?
Yeah, near towards the top of the show.
Paul wants to do the show buzzed. That's why.
Yeah, I was going to say you'll be. And then
we'll see. I think.
Again, you're going to turn upside down on your head, and you're going to suck down how much beer?
As much as I can.
For how long?
For as long as I can.
So it could be 12 seconds.
Could be 12 seconds. It could be 30. It could be 4 minutes. I don't know.
Oh, we need to do a super chat. Match the super chat.
Yeah.
Whoever's closest to the seconds, I don't know. We don't need to give them money. You need to give.
Yeah.
Maybe think about it off the air.
Yeah.
So we can figure out the way to do it.
What would you say? Like, let's get a fair over-under on what this should be. Like,
when was the last time you did this?
Oh, gosh, 20 years ago.
I'd say like 15 seconds,
15 seconds over-under? Okay.
So you're going to stick it in your mouth.
Yeah.
And it's unhinged.
Yeah. I mean, no. So somebody's going to, like, Emery will hold it and pump it until, I
15 seconds is probably the best over. Vegas would probably say, I would say somewhere over under at 15 seconds.
15 seconds. That's what we're going to do.
That's a long time.
It is.
That's like going underwater and holding your breath.
Yeah.
Except
if you were drinking all the water, you're swimming in.
All right. So tomorrow, sometime early in the show, at 3 o'clock, we come on the air, Central Time. Paul will do his keg stand.
Yes.
All right. There we go.
Yeah. So we'll be ready. And the keg stand will happen 15 seconds. I got to beat 15 seconds.
No, I don't know what. We haven't made up that number yet.
Craig, you just put the over-under at 15.
I would say that's probably what Vegas would think.
Okay. So then
I don't know.
I'm going to bang the over.
I definitely am not going longer than that. I mean, I don't think you realize 1 Mississippi, 2, and beer's flowing the entire time. So that's not nothing.
I mean, look, I've done longer than that in the past. I just
What was the longest you ever did?
Oh, I don't even remember. I mean, it was long. Like, it was impressive.
When was the last time
people talked about it?
Okay, we got a break for the top.
The last city I did this in was Tallahassee.
Oh my God! So you were in college?
Yeah, I was in college.
Okay.
Once you get out of college, there's not a lot of available keg stands. It's like it's one of the things that goes away.
The Vegas odds can change overnight. We'll see what happens. Paul's keg stand tomorrow, just after 3. Here is Paul's maybe last ever top 5.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
What's up? At Jack's suggestion, and I'm sorry, I'm not bringing it back. But, we got to do a different hello every single day. This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 ACC Scenarios, brought to you by our good friends at Texas Beef House. Use our code SECOM10 when you go to TexasBeefHouse.com on your next order and save 10%. All right, Top 5 ACC Scenarios. Don't kind of think of these in order because I think anything that's shown us the last couple of days of reporting on this is going to be maybe more happenstance than a lot of things, or like there's not a clear path any way. Like there's a lot of roads in the ACC, future, and all of them have obstacles. So let's talk about that. Number 5, FSU and Clemson go to the Big 12. Look, if this thing ended tomorrow, if the lawsuits were settled and they say, okay, you got to pay us $175 million over the next 7 years and you're out, then and they genuinely did not have a home at any other conference, they could go to Brett Yormark and be like, we're in. And Brett Yormark would be like, I'll make that happen, because we kind of think that would happen. But this is probably not their first choice, because what they're trying to do is make $80 to $90 million a year. Now, is that a fool's errand on FSU and Clemson's part? It might be. And I've said this many times, and I'll say it again, and I hope you drive this home. This is not about FSU and Clemson just being mad that they don't make that. This is about FSU and Clemson being mad that Indiana makes that Rutgers makes that a bunch of these teams are getting all this money based on an agreement they made 100 years ago to be in the Big Ten Conference or the SEC, and they've not put forth the effort in football that Florida State and Clemson have. That's the bottom line. Now, is that right? That's a matter of opinion. But it's more about that than Florida State being mad that Alabama has that money, or Clemson being mad that South Carolina, their rival, has that money, given the fact that, particularly in Clemson's case, when it comes to South Carolina, they've been historically far better than South Carolina, and it's not even close. Number 4, a reformed ACC. You like my little X-Men 97 shapeshifter here? So this one this one's the trickiest one. To avoid being sued for wantonly hurting another entity in court, to avoid multiple lawsuits from the teams that would be left out. Basically, the way I see this happening is that Florida State and Clemson leave the ACC. The ACC then collapses. ESPN uses their opt-out deal to basically end the television contract, which would start everything anew, and then Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and others reform an ACC that is more palatable to television ratings, smaller, and pays them more money. That is really hard to pull off, though. There are a lot of moving parts in that, but I do think that is something that has been discussed, especially given the Magnificent 7 teams last year that all got together about the future of the league and revenue distribution and the like. Now, only 2 of them are suing the league, and then you've got North Carolina out in the fringe kind of doing the wait-and-see game. But, there would be a possibility for that. I just think it would be extremely difficult to pull off, and one of those things that certainly it's possible, but each cup that you'd have to throw a ball in is smaller and smaller on the way through to make it happen. Number 3, a free-for-all, absolute chaos. Florida State and Clemson leave, they don't go to the same place, everybody's spread across, and then we get 3 24-team conferences or something weird like that that are all spread across the country, and the Super League begins. That, to me, is more likely than the actual last one, just because it feels like that's where it's going, and eventually people are going to get pushed out and shoved off, and if you're creating something that's for television before it's for anything else, which is most of college football right now, a free-for-all in the absolute doomsday scenario, that could happen. Now, again, I still don't think that's as likely, given the fact that there's too many moving parts to really make that happen and make it work, especially with television contracts and everything going on. It would be easier for more of a micro move for everybody. But again, who knows when it comes to college football realignment. Number 2, FSU and Clemson and others to the Big Ten. So you take some of those schools and they go and they wind up in the Big Ten. You'll hear a lot of things about AAU and all this other stuff. I just have a hard time believing that the Big Ten wouldn't want to get into the only part of the country that they're not in, which is the Southeast, or the South. They're not there. They could be the true nationwide conference, which is kind of appears what their goal is. Tony Petitti's staying out of this. And again, he's not going to say anything until the end. And also, our FSU and Clemson, anybody else like North Carolina, Virginia, whoever they would want. I still don't buy a lot of this on Virginia, but we'll see. I mean, maybe there's something I'm wrong about them, and I'm certainly willing to take that. But are they going to be another fit? And that brings us to our number one. I think FSU and Clemson to the SEC and the rest of the ACC staying together is a more likely scenario than a lot of people want to admit right now. Like this morning, as of today, FSU and Clemson don't have a home in the SEC. Particularly, I guess there's no additive value for Florida State, as they say, but if this is about television matchups and making the best TV matchups and being the league that has the best games week in and week out, can you honestly tell me that Greg Sankey is going to say no to them? Can you honestly tell me, if they're in the water, that Greg Sankey is going to go, no, they're not additive. They're going to be, FSU's not a good partner. They're combative. Bro, you just took Texas. Like, combative, they're the kings of combative. Florida State, minor league combative compared to Texas. Minor league. Clemson, Oklahoma, like, you just Texas and Oklahoma. You're going to take Florida State and Clemson because you're adding two more teams that are going to make your TV matchups, even for the ones that aren't that good. Like, yeah, Kentucky and Vanderbilt don't get as many ratings as, say Georgia and Tennessee do. But guess what? You'll get more ratings on Vanderbilt games when Clemson's playing them, won't you? You'll get more ratings on Mississippi State games if Florida State's playing them, won't you? And then you'll be able to go to the TV contract and be like, give me all the money, because we don't have Rutgers versus Indiana. We don't have Maryland versus Minnesota in our league. The worst we can do is Vanderbilt versus and I'm not even dogging at Kentucky. They're good. Like, the worst we can do is when Vanderbilt plays somebody, and even still people watch it. So you can't tell me, again, if FSU and Clemson are truly available, that Greg Sankey is not going to go, yeah, let's do that thing. Right now he doesn't have to, and right now they can say all the things that they want. But until Florida State and Clemson are free of the SEC, all this is speculation, and I truly believe that this is probably where they end up. This is where I think they end up. Maybe not in this round of realignment, but on the next one, Florida State and Clemson will eventually be in the SEC. That feels a little inevitable to me. I know there's a lot of people out there that might say I'm crazy, but I do think that they're doing this to get there. And as much as FSU might be bitter against Greg Sankey for campaigning to get him out of the playoff, well, if you can't beat him, join him. That's what Texas did. And if you're pulling all these Texas-like moves, why not do the same thing? So we'll see. All of this has a lot to be worked out, and we have no idea what's going to happen. They're still embroiled in lawsuits. That is the top five. Let's wrap it up.
Okay, Paul, thank you very much. Brought to you by TexasBeefHouse.com. Right now, there's a live online auction today and tomorrow by going to bidonbeef.com or TexasBeefHouse.com. All right, Garrett Ross, thank you. Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter. Appreciate everybody, our sponsors, those of you who text, also in the chat. And we're back at it again tomorrow just after 3, the keg stand. Paul Catalina will open up the show with that. So, hope you have a great evening. Thanks to Craig Smoke, Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoke. Have a great night. This is 365 Sports Tonight. Please hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't. And also tonight at 10:30 on the local CW 365 Sports Tonight. Good night.